wreck avoidances,
Stay low. Eat high, stay low.
daring passes,
Oh, you're gonna get it.
silly jumps,
Oh my god, a drive-through.
the thrill of victory,
They're against the wall. Good one, Mark. Stay low.
and the occasional mishap.
My sand crash.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
A new beginning with familiar faces. For the first time, Lionheart is going back to its roots. 18 races to determine who is the best and the most exciting form of auto racing on the planet. 200-mile-an-hour Indy cars, inches from disaster or glory. There can only be one inaugural champion, whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. Find out next. The Lionheart Speedway Series, presented by DMLC Racing Channel, starts now.
For more than a century, Speedway, Indiana has been the home to the racing capital of the world. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway has played host to some of the biggest and greatest stories in all of sports. It has also been where some of the top headlines of all of 2021 have been for the Lionheart Racing Series. It is here where a month ago, Adam Blocker became the second two-time winner of the HyperX Indianapolis 500 in the Lionheart IndyCar Series. It is also where Mark Cohn edged out Chris Fowler by 5/1000ths of a second to win his second Triple Crown race of the Lionheart Retro Series campaign. Today is the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by the DMLC Racing Channel's turn to make history. This is the Sim Racing Studio Indianapolis 500 presented by Chris Fowler Racing. Hello everyone and welcome to RaceSpottV's coverage of the Lionheart Racing Series powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com. And don't forget to use the promo code LionHRT15 for 15% off orders. My name is Justin Prince. Alongside me is Renzo Bonder. Arjuna Kankipati is in the producer's seat for today's action, with TV cameras provided by Esteban Bao at TrackCams22.com. Live timing and scoring is available through RaceSpottV/Indy. Let's dive into our Sim Experience Countdown to Green for today as we get ready for the start of the second half of the season with the Triple Crown double points paying race for Renzo. A lot of pressure for these drivers as this is a race many want to win.
Yeah, many want to win, and also opens up the second half of the season of sorts because this is an 18 track schedule, and we are on round 10. So I think everybody's scrambling themselves, especially in this race for the double points, try to go back up in the standings if you had a fumble in the previous rounds. But I like this round more than everything because this car is more of a driver's car than the IR18, in my opinion. Can't wait to see how they will navigate through the aero wash just using the throttle and the brakes.
Keep in mind, last race it was Alexander Vandersand who came away with the fuel mileage victory in a fully green race at Kentucky. As we take a look at your driver standings presented by the DMLC Racing Channel. That shook up the point standings a little bit, that victory, as that shot Vandersand to second in the standings over Tony Schowen, Christopher Matt Taylor behind Alexis Newsom, the points leader for factory backed. An incredible season for Alexis so far, Lorenzo.
Yeah, what a season from Newsom she had so far, and of course the last round isn't the round that she wanted to have, even though she got third place. But nevertheless, it's something that we have to take notice of, and see a rookie leading the standings so far in the Speedway Series is nothing short of an amazing feat.
Absolutely, and keep in mind, drivers like Robert Malechka have also had some strong performances for factory backed, which is why when you look at the team standings presented by HyperX, they're second in the standings. They are down one driver today, though. Nick DeGroot currently covering NASCAR action, so they are down to 2 of their competitors for today. Adrenaline Motorsports leads the team standings with 1,067 points. Team Race First, Black and Red, are 3rd and 4th, with Synergy Motorsports Blue rounding out the top 5. Pretty close when it comes to that battle for second on back in the team standings.
It looks really close. I could say even first place today might look really close depending on circumstances, right? Depending on where Newsom and Malecka finished. And we know they are very good runners of the 500. We saw Newsom in the Open on the IR18 Open Indy 500 a few months ago, and she was doing really good until some race issues put her out of the race early. But still, can't wait to see what these 500 miles race do to people in this car. The strategy is a whole lot different from the IR18, how they negotiate in traffic, so it should provide a good one for us here today.
It's also been a very good rookie class for the Lionheart Speedway Series. We take a look at the rookie standings presented by buttkicker. Newsom, your overall points leader, just so happens to be the rookie standings leader, but also give a shout out to some of the drivers in those standings who have had great performances. Matt Taylor, 3rd in the rookie standings. Barrett Rolfe, he's come close to victory a couple times this season, 4th in the rookie standings. AJ Musselman rounding out the top 5 rookie standings. Why? Some great drivers who are coming up through the ranks for the Lionheart Speedway Series this season with the Dallara DW12.
And the good majority of them are actually in the top 10 in the overall standing. The most notably Newsom and Vandersand, who are in the top 3, respectively. Newsom being P number 1 and Vandersand P number 2. But Matt Taylor, a driver that actually led laps in the Kentucky race, but just couldn't capitalize with the late fuel saving and had to pit and was shuffled back a few spots. So the outing over here for this DW12 championship is really strong, probably the strongest we've had in all previous seasons.
Absolutely, and this is going to be a challenging race as we take a look at your series details presented by Minus 273, the premier name in karting gloves. Their shooting gloves are super lightweight and durable, made of breathable poly spandex. With your Carter Sim Racer, Minus 273 gives you the control to reach victory lane. For more information on Minus 273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit minus273.biz. Don't forget to use the promo code Minus 273 LHRS15 for 15% off orders. Tonight, we'll see us run with custom fixed setups, which, with this being the second Triple Crown, it's going to be important that you got your preparation down. You have to rely on just your hands and feet to be able to make your way around this racetrack. No in-car tools. The Dallara DW12 on the iRacing service with fixed racing. Some drivers describe the feeling of that fixed setup as a little bit tight, Lorenzo, in the first couple laps. Lorenzo.
Especially a lap 1 and when they go for the double file restart, where things can get real tight. We saw on the 500 in the IR18, we actually had a lap 1 crash with Brian Carey, and it was a little bit weird because the car got loose in turn number 1, and I can't wait to see how the DW12 is actually set up for these big arrow wash lap 1 while the tires still coat and how they go around the track, but will provide us some great action nevertheless.
Absolutely, it's going to be interesting to see how these drivers fare in the first corners as we return to the Brickyard for the 3rd and final trip across Lionheart competitions this season. The inaugural Lionheart Speedway Series is 500. No previous winners of the Brickyard are in the field, by the way, where the pole sitter has only won once when it comes to the DW12's time. Remember, the defending race winner when it comes to this chassis in Lionheart competition is Jonathan Goke, who had a dominant stretch of the time in the IndyCar series. Back in his time, one of the two-time winners of the HyperX Indianapolis 500 on the IndyCar side of the bracket. So keep that in mind for tonight as these drivers get ready to race for 500 miles, 200 laps with the Dallara DW12. Different characteristics compared to the IR18 today.
You know, it's a tricky one. First and foremost, I think the most important thing is no in-car adjustments, no weight jackers, no auto-roll, anti-roll bars. So that makes a whole lot of difference because you don't rely on, the car making its auto adjustments, and it's not on the driver's side, it's more on the car side. So you have to now be more skillful on how to negotiate air wash and all these kind of things going 225 miles per hour. So it's a tricky one for me.
Let's talk about this racetrack, Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It looks simple enough from a top glance, but this is a track that takes a lot of skill to drive around, Lorenzo. 2.5 miles, 4 distinct turns around the corners where you have to approach them in various different ways. And in turn, so many strategies can be made or broken by the cause of trouble here at this facility.
As some could say, it's the hardest ball dance you can actually have around in the world, right? Because the shallow banking doesn't help one bit. There's a certain rhythm how to negotiate this track, and doing for 200 laps is not easy. It's real hard.
It's going to be very difficult indeed to make your way around this racetrack today. Open since 1909. And one of the largest facilities in the entire world when it comes to sports. A big facility and a big race, all set to host things for the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by the DMLC Racing Channel. And as these drivers get ready for today's action, let's go towards trackside for back home again in Indiana.
Back home again in Indiana, and it seems that I can see the gleaming candlelight still burning bright through the sycamores for me. The new moon hay its fragrance through the fields I used to roam. When I dream about the moonlight on the Wabash, how I long for my Indiana home.
It's time to take a look at your starting grid presented by Buttkicker for what's expected to be a thrilling race. It's Brian Beard who sets the pole time by 4/1000ths of a second over Joe Branch. Jason Galvin starts in third with Robert Malechka III rounding out the top 4. Craig Forsyth and Brian Yazik, who will be running in a one-off start today, round out the top 6. Alexis Newsom, the points leader, starts in 7th with Chris Stouffer in 8th position, with the Muscleman, AJ Muscleman, in 9th position. George Zotto starts in 10th with Barrett Rolfe with one of his better qualifying performances this season in 11th. Miguel Hagstrom is in 12th. Ken Hacker starts in 13th today with Chris Fowler 14th, with Vern Hawkins III and Tony Schowen rounding out the top 16. Last race winner Alexander Vandersand will start 17th with Matt Taylor in 18th spot. Christopher Kreisky starts in 19th with Charles Teed in 20th. Matt Houston, along with Luis Gonzalez Nunez, 21st, 22nd. Paul Jenkins just a couple 100s off the pole in 23rd, with Trevor Malone in 24th position. Rounding out the starting positions, Chris Lanini in 25th. Emerson Santos starts 26th. Matt Wagner, 27th. Jeff Young in 28th. And Mike Rigney rounds out your 29 drivers for today's action here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Drivers currently making the way towards the starting grid. Your thoughts, Lorenzo, on how things could play out today?
It's going to be, again, interesting to see how lap 1 goes. We know that the main points of overtaking is the start, restarts, and maybe once you find an opening here and there. So it's going to be some exciting 200 laps. I think strategy is more key here than the IR18 when we had this last month. Can't wait to see how the drivers will perform on this track.
Let's take a look at your featured onboard cameras for today's race. First, with your HyperX onboard camera, AJ Musselman. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. With the Sim Racing Studio on board, it's Brian Yazik. Plug and race/fly software and hardware to enhance your immersion. Visit simracingstudio.com. With minus 273 on board, it's Barrett Rolfe. Minus 273, the premier name in karting gloves. Visit minus273.biz. And with the butt kicker on board, it's Alexander Vanderson. What you see and what you hear is what you feel. For more information, visit thebuttkicker.com. And plenty of onboard cameras throughout today's action as well to follow along with. Thanks to our partners at trackcams22.com. Your keys to victory today, as we have one driver who's already crashed into a barrier. Trouble already in the pace laps. Vern Hawkins III has crashed into the tire barrier.
Yeah, weird one for Vern right here. I think he might have some technical issues. Wheel looks like not working properly, but very unfortunate we have already our first outing of sorts in this race, not even at the race start.
A tough break for Vern Hawkins III to have a technical issue coming out of turn 2. He is now reported on the radio he is done before the green flag. On that note, competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart. And this is the start of the Sim Racing Studio Indianapolis 500, presented by Chris Fowler Racing. Brian Beard in control of the field as the iRacing pace car is off. And the green flag waves. We're underway from the Brickyard. Side by side down the back straightaway for the race lead already. Joe Branch takes the point away from Brian Beard. Jason Galvin trying to make it side by side into turn 3. They go back single file for the first run up to the start and finish line. And at the end of the first lap, the draft helping Brian Beard. So they go 3 wide for the lead. Beard leads the first lap.
Yeah, but what a move I think that was from Galvin. Going from third to first already in the first lap here, Justin, and trying to go for that extra point to lead the lap, but things are not settled in yet.
Looking very busy when it comes to the slipstream already. Brian Beard going for another move to take back the lead into turn 3. And the swap draft when it comes to these cars could be pretty critical today. Have to keep an eye on that, especially since it's a very cool racetrack today. The air temp started at 71 degrees Fahrenheit. These drivers dealing with 97 degrees Fahrenheit track temp. That's 22 degrees Celsius, 36 degrees. The track temp as to the race lead again is Galvin into turn 1.
And what that will do, Justin, for the cars, I think we have a car going off in turn number 1 and 2, but that actually helps the tires not to overheat them, especially during the long run. So as Brian Beard goes on the inside again, that will help out the wear of the car so we can push more.
Very back and forth to start things off here at Indianapolis. And the main thing too is some drivers are hungry to gain track position early. How about Chris Stouffer up +4? He's already closing in to your race leaders as they go side by side again on the point. Galvin makes the swap. That time by, he got the lead lap of the stripe as we follow along with Stouffer.
And for now, Adrenaline Motorsports having a really good result here. Branch P3, Stouffer P4. I'm just trying to see where the other driver of the team is actually at right now, which is Tony Xiao. And Tony is still trying to scramble himself on the track, but so far, 2 drivers in the top 10, that's really good. And better than Alexi Newsom in the factory back.
Usually track position very critical when it comes to a race such as this, especially with that swap draft that can come into play early on for your race leaders. Saving is going to be also critical. We'll have to see how these competitors fare out in these first stints. After all, the stints today are estimated to be about 30 laps or so on the fuel roads.
Yeah, not as far as the IR18, where they can go up to 29, between 29 and 35 laps, 36 if you go for the Alexander Rossi strategy of fuel saving. But you can see now, battle for P8, 9, and 10 is where also things are getting a little bit funny as well, because Newsom, Anzaldo, Barrett, Rolf are trying to negotiate for a spot in the middle of the pack.
And Rolf thinking about a peek right now to the inside for that 9th position. Not able to get a run, though, that time down the straightaway as all the drivers line up single file. One driver nearly scraping the wall was Craig Forsyth. Let's take a look at what happened, by the way, to Vern Hawkins III. Should be worth noting, he is back on the racetrack, but he is 2 laps down after this issue coming out of turn 2 on the pace lap. A weird situation for Vern Hawkins III, not the way you want to start a race, Lorenzo.
Yeah, not the way you want to start a race, but we've seen this thing before. I think Scott Dixon is a prime example. Go a lap down, go 2 laps down, just conquer itself. Use these strategies, yellow flags to your advantage, and go back to the lead lap.
Taking a look as some of the battles continue now. Rolf trying to make a move on Anzaldo. This is now for 8th position. And Anzaldo now getting freight train from cars on the outside line. Trying to hold on to a position, but Chris Fowler forced to back out of it in turn 3.
A good job from Rolf to back out of turn 3, and everybody lined up single file. I think this car is a little bit easier for you to overtake than the IR-18, how the aero package works. It's still a hard car to negotiate because you don't have those in-car adjustments for you to negotiate properly. The overtakes go up in the weight jackets and things like that. So it's a tricky one, but again, if you have a good run, it's easier to overtake than the IR-18.
Absolutely, this is going to be intriguing as things continue to stay active at the very front. Brian Beard just swapped for the race lead again. Joe Branch continues to hold on to the 3rd spot. And at this point, what can Joe Branch do to make sure he doesn't overcook his tires, knowing he's in the dirty air of the cars in front, and it can be difficult to build up a run when they continue to swap like this up at the front in front of him?
I think Joe Branch is in a comfortable spot. You know, it's the IR-18. I like to call it the IR-18 spot. I was talking to Chris Steele about it when I was doing a prep for a 500 race. If you're the 3rd car back, you don't have to over-push the car way too much. Just staying back, just work the fuel gauge, and you're gonna get some spots on the pit stop square. It's also a prime opportunity for overtakes.
The butt kicker onboard camera, Alexander Vandersen up 3 positions. One of the drivers trying to watch along as some of the drivers are starting to utilize a bit of the top line. Some by force, some by choice. Chris Fowler that time trying to utilize the top. Forced a bit of shuffling behind as Vandersen tried to peek around the outside of Tony Schauwen, backed off, forced to check up, and Schauwen backed it up a lot through turn 1.
As Schauwen is trying to claw himself up in the scene, he's trying to get within the top 10 and make it through adrenaline. All the adrenaline motorsport drivers be within that top 10 and making the life of factory back drivers not easier tonight. As you guys see now the number 20 of Chris Fowler trying to have a look on the inside of Jorge Anzaldo, but just have no room to work with and go for that overtake.
And it seems at the very least in the early going, if you're on the bottom for the corner entry, you're in a good spot to potentially complete the pass as long as you're able to get enough of a run to get fully side by side. But if you're on the top line by the corner entry, that's where it seems you go backwards, Lorenzo, in the early going.
Yeah, it looks like that's the lines being picked from the drivers. Also, you're breaking away from the arrow wash that you're gonna get in the corner entry, but it's lines that are really interesting for this car. The IR-18 doesn't work like that, but I like how they negotiate with the DW12. But now, apparently, Maletzka, you can see the train of cars right behind him, and Fowler finally moved up 1 spot.
Fowler wanting to go up a couple more with the Newsom side by side, but Newsom able to power her way on the outside line. Rolf trying to find clean air to build up a run now with Robert Malechka the 3rd. That top line has been rolling down the back straightaway. The wind currently gusting, by the way, towards the back straightaway, over top the grandstands for the front stretch. So it is a bit of a side wind down those straightaways today.
Yeah, and it kind of can, and that can actually alter how the car performs, especially with the more worn out tires in the latter portion of the grandstands. or the car can get a little bit wobbly or very loose on corner entry, even though that might give you speed going to the back straight. You can hit the nearly 230 miles per hour, depending on circumstances, how good of a run you get. But it's those conditions that you have to negotiate constantly for 200 laps, and it's not the easiest thing to do.
Not very easy, but one driver who's doing something that's very difficult to do is cut his way to the field. One of the drivers doing so, you see them towards the back end, Matt Taylor trying to pick up some spots. This is right now towards the back end of the train, and they're starting to lose ground in the draft. With this side-by-side, they're holding onto the slipstream by about 7 or 8 tenths, this group.
And the gap to the leaders are right about 3 seconds, so it's still not out of the range, but if I'm Matt Taylor and AJ Musselman right there, I'll probably would swap drafts every single opportunity they can get and then get closer, because that actually works in this car, as you're probably going to see now. Matt Houston contend for positions now.
These are some teammates battling back and forth with some of the race first machines. Keep in mind, 19th on back has already lost more than a second. They are about 1.5 seconds back. Christopher Kraigsky on back at the moment. Eric Rolf has already passed Craig Forsyth. Trying to make the move now is Chris Fowler. But one thing I've noticed here is watch Rolf. Watch how he's able to make some of these moves. He's been able to get runs on the inside and the outside to make passes. He passed Forsyth last time by on the high side, then tried to cut underneath Brian Yazik on the inside, this time being patient.
And this time being patient, but what a start from Rolf. Once again, you know, we often talk about Rolf not having the best qualifying positions, but on the race he makes it up always. And I mean always. That happened last time by, and this time again it is happening, going from P11 all the way up to P6. What a start from the number 33 driver.
Seems some of the other drivers starting to pick up on that with mostly quality skies, with the track temp still staying fairly cool for today. Already about halfway through our first fuel run of the race. And when it comes to the strategy, of course, we talked about the fuel stints already on how you want things to break down, but how do you try and make sure you hit that magic number? Because the range drivers are expected to need to get to make it to the end today, about lap 170. How do you make sure you get that number for today?
It's a tricky one. You might have to overextend some of your pit stops. Going 30-30-30 will get you by 150 by your second to last pit stop. So you're going to go on 180 and basically short fuel the car about a third of the city. You're going to have 2/3 of a fuel in the car. As you see Barrett Wolf going on the inside now, the number 55 of Brian Yachik. But let's see if he's going to get the run to actually make that overtake. He's working hard to it. So overstretching the runs and counting the L5s might be the way to go, Justin.
Yeah, some of the drivers I spoke to mentioned any yellow flags can obviously scramble the strategy. Some of the drivers hoping to get some luck when it comes to that. Should be worth noting that they have stopped swapping for the lead for the past little while or so. In front of all this, Brian Beard has now maintained about a 0.27 second gap for the rest of the field. For the time being, you see them lined up astern, while Yazik tries to find a hole back in line.
And it looks like the swapping hasn't worked in terms of, you know, the strategy of having two cars break away from this pack and basically fight it out for themselves. Unfortunately for them, for both Galvin and Beard, that has not worked because Branch and Stouffer are right on their tail wing. 2.2 seconds behind and 0.4 for Stouffer. So while you're trying to save fuel with that strategy, the real mission with that is trying to open up a gap, and that has not worked.
Lexus Newsom, meanwhile, has been struggling a little bit to start off this race. A -3 in the first 19 laps of this race, coming up to the start of lap 20 this time by. What do you think's going through Newsom's mind, knowing that she's dropped back? On the bright side, though, is working with the teammate right now in line.
Yeah, she's working right now with Maletska right ahead of her and Brian Atkins right ahead of her as well. I wouldn't be too concerned being 3 spots back this early on in the race. What matters is where you're at in the final pit stop. If you're far away back, you might have to work the car a bit more than you want to. And I was looking at the lead real quick here. It's getting interesting because Stouffer now made the overtake on Joe Branch in the previous lap because Joe went for the overtake and he just couldn't commit.
Move Barrett Rolfe up 7 spots already in 20 laps. He is coming and quickly for that top 3. That's now put Joe Branch under attack by Craig Forsyth, but the problem is, better run on the high line this time. Chris Fowler has also been on the move, taking advantage every time Barrett Rolfe made a move. Guess who's coming next? Fowler, who nearly gets hit. Big chick up.
I surely thought that would be a crash right there, no joke.
That was within inches of the end plate of Craig Forsyth's wing. That's how close it got there as Brian Yazik now makes the move to the inside as a result here for 7th spot.
I think Fowler needs to thank the gods of sim racing that he's actually alive in this one because not even a thought would go through there properly. What a close call between Forsyth and Fowler right there.
That's broken up the pack a little bit by about 10 car lengths as they start swapping a little bit for that 7th position. They still are within drafting distance. That's the bright side right now, to be able to stay within range of the rest of the race leaders.
You're about a second back. You're not all far back from the leaders so far. You're still within some contendable range from them, and work the draft a little bit more and work that fuel as well. And we're approaching already the start of the plane in about 8 laps, so it's going to be interesting how they shuffle up these things with 8 laps to go on their field considerably.
We talked about this earlier, by the way, how the pack has broken up a little bit between 18th and 19th. That gap has increased to almost 2 seconds of note. Christopher Kreisky leads that second pack. These drivers are running upwards of 1 to 2 tenths slower than some of the drivers in front. Some of the other competitors are in the 40.5s. This group is in the 40.7s. And Lorenzo, what can they do to try and catch back up? Because there are some drivers who have had good speed this season in this group, like Jenkins, like Lanini, like Malone, who are back here.
It's a tricky one. If you're already a second back, nearly 2 seconds, I would say I would be bold here. It's nearly impossible for you to catch up. You would have to take a consideration of a yellow flag or someone making a mistake to get closer and make that overtake. But so far, that's what happens. If you're too far back, it's impossible to catch.
Alexander Van der Sant right now among the drivers who are still lined up astern, keeping things calm meanwhile, but it's also to where you have to wonder where they play things out to try and gain that track position. Seen several drivers in practice have different approaches for the pit entry here for today's race as well, Lorenzo. Some of them taking a little bit shower, trying to keep it a little bit conservative. Others sent it a good extra 20 to 50 feet deeper before they hit the brakes.
Yeah, you can get a little bit aggressive over here, and I was looking on that as well. Now you can see the number 6 of Georgia and Zado on the inside. From the perspective of Alex Van der Sant, he's not going to be able to make the overtake so far. That might open up for Van der Sant. But yeah, I was looking at that as well. Some drivers breaking all the way down to the final portion of the cone to get within pit limiter range. So it's a tricky one. Not the easiest pit entry you can have it over here, but you can make it if you know your stress well. And that actually saves you a lot of time if you know how to entry and exit your pit lane properly.
Barrett Rolfe, meanwhile, is hunting for that lead still. He is now up to 3rd spot, passing Chris Stouffer on the inside. That we're not able to follow along this time. But what an impressive first into the race for Rolfe, going from the middle of the pack right into contention. We've talked about his experience in the past, especially of GT Academy fame. Now the Ascari Autosport machine is within range of the top 2, starting to save a little bit behind Galvin and Beard, lifting that time in 1.
Yeah, and if you're Rolfe here, Justin, do you go for that 1 spot? Because I personally wouldn't. This early on in the race, the only thing that will get you is that extra point for leading a lap. But for now, I think Rolfe is in a really good spot so far. And I could see him settle down for 3 laps and go to the pit lane considerably well in top 5. But him and also Chris Fowler in the top 5 as well, having some really good first stint. Tyler going for P14 all the way up to P5.
Robert's not in the best position right now, this group, because we talked about the separation between the first and second packs, 18th to 19th before. It's now 3 packs. Because of that checkup, in part, Forsyth and Yazik now lead the second pack of cars that have already lost a grand total of 1.2 seconds to the competitors in front.
Yeah, but unfortunately for Maleczka, who wanted to go for the overtake, the draft is so strong in these cars that even with the run on the inside and the side draft, it is not enough for him to close on Jacek and go for the overtake on the entry turn number 3. So he's going to have to be a passenger on that draft for a few more laps until they get to the pit lane.
And Beard is down to the lane to start off the window, so as expected, around that lap 30 mark, that clean air coming into play for Beard to where he had to come in at 29 laps on his respective stint. As Beard is up on the jacks, it should be worth noting that Galvin and Rolf are trying to scrap side by side. Where will he fare out is the quick question on Beard on the strategy. As now, this time side by side, Rolf going from the middle of the pack to the point in the span of 30 laps.
It's downright just insane what Batter Rolf is doing. It's not hard for you to claw from outside of the top 10. Just be patient and work the draft and get on by 11 cars, 10 cars to go to the top spot. You can see him already defending the draft out of the drivers as they might go into the pit lane this time by or the next time by.
Already indications coming in from Galvin, remember, was a part of the swap draft in the early going of this race. We'll see who joins Galvin. This time, no one from inside the top 5. Gretzky and Santos also have ducked down and completed service down to the pit lane. This time by as well, the Muscleman, AJ Muscleman, Trevor Malone, Paul Jenkins also rolling down, and Malone's picked up a friend.
Oh. That's not your best friend, by the way.
Yeah, that is the yellow cone that he has taken with him. As look at this entry, as to avoid a car, he takes a massive speeding penalty.
What amazes me is the car control, the commitment, but more specifically the car control to keep it on track, because he came in real hot.
That is obviously for sure speeding, which is a massive hold, will cost Malone at least 1 lap. As a result, as the rest of the leaders are starting to come in, Branch, Forsyth, Yazik, Shawan, Taylor, Houston, Hagstrom, among the cars who ducked down this time by. Indications for the rest of the cars are they plan to come in this time by. So some of them able to stretch it to about 32 laps on their stints, including Barrett Rolf, who while pushing was still able to save the gas. He's now coming in.
As Stouffer is coming in as well, nearly crashing the back.
That was close. An air close call in the early going. Chris Stouffer able to make it to the speed limit, though, right over the back gearbox of Rolf. Maleczka III and Newsom are the only drivers who have not ducked down so far. Let's take a look at how close this was. You can see the different approaches right there on the pit entry.
That's a close call, to say the least.
A very close call, as off and away they go. As a matter of fact, it's Stouffer who gets the edge over Rolf on the pit lane, coming off side by side at the commitment cone. So Stouffer has cycled in front of Rolf. Maleczka III has ducked down. Newsom able to continue to stretch for run, it should be worth noting, it appears. This all while Brian Beard has cycled right into second position, right between Stouffer and Rolf.
For green flag perspectives right now, Justin, Newsom going 34 laps on the gas, it's the ideal scenario that you want. If you're still fast in it, and you're still going from 34 laps, you can get real close to that 170 threshold when you come to the final pit stop. So for now, Newsom with a really good job on the field and stay within relatively good spots on the top 10. I can't wait to see where she gets cycled out once she's done with the pit lane, though.
And for some drivers, their goal is to split this race up into quarters. Others like to wait until the final 50 laps before they make their charge. Pretty clear the strategy towards Newsom: stay calm and collected to try and save the gas to stretch the fuel stints. But it's Brian Beard who looks to try and take the net race lead and overall lead. With Newsom coming across the pit lane, Beard does. So your top four, Beard, Stouffer, Rolfe, and Fowler, are now grouped up together. There is a separation now that is built up between Fowler and Branch as a result of this pit cycle.
Yeah, it did open up a little bit on the cycle, but now looking at Newsom, shuffled back, I think P18 in the grid, so she's a far ways back, but if she keeps going like that, I can see her as someone to look for on the final pit stop out of this race, so don't count her out just yet.
Still very early on in this race, playing the long game right now. The factory back machines, it appears, for today's race. Remember, Watchka the third also stretched about 33 laps on the stint. Watchka the third cycle to 9th. Newsom currently battling for about 17th position, 7 seconds back. But for the race lead, Chris Fowler has just made a big dive to take away the point at the front of the field. It should be worth noting as these cars line up. And a massive dive for Fowler. He will lead his first laps of the race, but Brian Beard wants to keep the point here, it appears.
Yeah, and the swap has begun once again right now. You have this 4-car pack. You can actually have 6 depending on how Joe Branch and Brian Yachik want to be aggressive in it. And also Jason Galvin as well, how aggressive they want to be to close down on that gap. But really good swapping so far between the number 20 and the number 05.
Back and forth they go once more. That time by, it will be Beard who gets the lead lap by 9/1000ths of a second. As this is all going on, some battling continues right on behind them with some of the air packs right now. Looking towards Matt Houston as he tries to hold on to the 10th position, up 11 spots. Tony Schowen, Georgian Zotto, Matt Taylor among the drivers lined up in this train.
And they're about to join someone else right in front of them, which is Robert Malecka. So Malecka might get eaten alive in a little bit by this 3-car pad that is actually switching for positions. But so far, Malecka driving all by himself and not being able to save fuel. He will be able to save now in about 1 or 2 lap time.
Going to be very critical, Matt Houston, by the way. 1 top 10 on the season coming into today's race. It's coming in the 9 starts so far this campaign. 16th in the point standing. Some ups and downs for Houston, but is someone that we've seen gamble on strategy when it comes to these respective cars. Tony Schowen, meanwhile, has been very competitive this season, have to say. 3rd in the point standings, had an interesting race at Kentucky, but right now is looking fairly solid as well in the early going.
Looking solid early on as well. I think it was one of these very odd, some could say it's a very odd race, either for Tony Schowen, Matt Houston, and everybody else, but the running was real good, but he just couldn't commit towards the latter portion. I think the fuel strategy, but for Alex Vandersand, Matt Taylor, and I think someone else, I'm trying to remember, was so big, especially for Vandersand, that I think caught some people off guard, and Sean Houston might have been some of these guys who was caught off guard.
Now, very impressive to say the very least what Vandersand was able to do at Kentucky last round out. The swap continues, by the way, for a couple of groups, as you see down the front straightaway. And the interesting thing, the swaps in some cases are working, in other cases, it is costing some competitors time. The Joe Branch Jason Galvin pack, for example, was within 1 second Then they started swapping for a bit. They've now fallen back 4/10 since the swapping started.
And again, now Jason Galvin with the swap going to turn number 3. Basically, that happened last lap in the previous lap as well. So I think that is not helping in the long run for them, even though they are saving fuel. There's saving that slight bit of fuel, but I don't know if they're going to be within equal conditions as the rest of the grid is actually on right now. But they can get, again, within that 1 second, they can start dreaming and becoming closer and closer and together with that front pack.
Keep in mind, it's an art form, Lorenzo, to be able to properly get the swap, because if you do it in the wrong spot, it costs you a lot of time. That's why drivers try and line it up for the entry into 1 and 3 here.
Yeah, it's a funny thing, right, Justin, where people say, oh, you're losing 0.2 of a second, 0.3 of a second, as we're seeing now, I think, in the back. Another swap for position, I think that is Fowler's being switched by Brian Beer, not in the back, but in the front. By Brian Beer taking the lead once again. But yeah, it's a false dance that I like to say. You know, you have to set your steps right. If you don't set your steps right, losing time is big in this track. Even though could be minor stuff, here those minor stuff are big if accrued properly in the track.
Looking back at Vandersen, has lost some time to the cars in front, now in the battle for 15th with AJ Musselman. See the buttkicker on board, looking back towards Musselman. These cars have picked up some time over Alexis Newsom and company, running the 40.6s. Some incredible swapping going on amongst these competitors for position here as we approach a quarter way through the distance. Here, that's the cars in front, by the way. It should be worth noting Fowler and Beard have now stopped swapping for the time being as Vandersen swaps his way back into 15th.
And the swap keeps still going on. And you know what's impressive for me right now is that we had 0 yellow flags so far in the race with a car that on paper is harder to drive than the IR18. But so far, really good outing so far.
Have to say one thing. The commentator's curse was very active just a few days ago for you, I heard. Hoping that doesn't come up into play today, Lorenzo.
I had a few beers prior to this broadcast yesterday to try to make up for what I'd done at the ISLWC, but let's hope it doesn't happen over here. Otherwise, I think you're gonna have a lot of penance walk to do.
It got to the point where it was put in the post-race story because it was lined up so perfectly for that respective race. Because you started singing the praises of one driver, around they go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What can you do? Sometimes it's one of those days, right? You don't have it in your way. What can you do? I can take the flak.
Swapping, by the way, has picked back up between Fowler and Beard. Beard now has lost a little bit of time with that swap that time. And to get back to the conversation about swapping back and forth, the key to the swap, of course, as some will tell you, is going to be the speed too. Because if you do that properly, you get good speed. You get the run too late, it costs you speed. You get the run too early, then it costs you speed potentially as well. And these drivers have been able to break away as a result of the swapping properly. As now Fowler has now been able to build up enough of a buffer where I think the swapping has settled down again.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if you really want to go for the swap, there are boards on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I think in the front and the back stretch, it goes from 4 to 1 every meter. I think it's 3 to 1, apologies, which gives you kind of an indicator. If you really want to go for that overtake, just be within right around the 2 board on the inside, ready to make the move. Otherwise, that is probably in the real danger of you losing time whenever you make that swap.
Absolutely, and keep in mind, as we talked about, it has been working out for Galvin and Branch so far. Forsyth and Yazik have also lost time in their swap group. All of the race leaders continue to turn the fastest lap times on the racetrack in the 40.5s. Take a look at Yazik in the sim racing studio on board. Continuing that swap with Craig Forsyth. Give a shout out to Yazik as we talked about a one-off start in the series for today. And running in a special throwback paint scheme for this respective race as well. Throwing back to Gordon Johncock's 1982 Indianapolis 500 scheme. It's a scheme that he said to me earlier in the week that has stuck out to him over the years, where he loves the story in the finish to that respective Indianapolis 500. And Tyler Graff was the one who was able to design this car for him. It's been an impressive one-off so far for Yazik in this race.
Yeah, and Yazik is one of those drivers that I wish we could see more out of him over here in the Lionheart series. We know he's one of the best drivers that came into the Lionheart series. Multiple race winners, so he's a driver that we should be looking for in this race, even though he's still in P8, a bit back from this four-car train and delayed. It's a car driver that we should not count out in this race so far. If I recall correctly, in the previous season, I think he was a runner-up or a pole sitter in the series. I would have to look that up.
He's run a couple Indianapolis 500s in the official service as well. As that swap continues, you see down the front straightaway. But have to ask now, as we're already approaching the pit windows in the next 10 to 12 laps or so for some of these competitors, what can Brian Beard do to make sure he gets himself to 30-31 or 31-32 in terms of his stint? Because remember, he was the only driver to make it 29 laps, just 29, on his last stint after leading laps.
Yeah, if I'm Beard, I probably wouldn't swap way too much. I probably would be a little bit back. Let Fowler take the toll right now of leading the race. And of course, it's something that you don't want to have, having someone else lead the race and try to accrue the laps led, because you get points for most laps led. But I think for now, that's the strategy a Beard wants to go if he really wants to make it through 31, 32, 33 laps in the fuel stage.
See how much he's pushing towards the back. Trying to build up a buffer, in fact, to Chris Fowler a little bit once more, with Chris Stouffer right behind. Barrett Rolfe, you see on board, also has just elected to stay in line this run. So being very patient, Rolfe, and just riding, knowing he's in good contention here with where he's at right now in the early going, as we've already passed a quarter way through the distance.
I've seen these drivers going the extra laps. They're probably trying to fight for those 32 laps in the fuel gauge, going 32, 64, 100, 96, 128. Then you can start dreaming of getting 170 with some ladder runs in the second or third to last stints. But for now, if you get to 32, I think you're in a really comfortable spot going to the final pit stop, and we have to wait and see.
It's the patience game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's like a chess. That best way you can describe it is a chess game.
Chess versus checkers, indeed. When it comes to that, you don't want to end up playing checkers and trying to lead every single lap. Worth noting, Chris Fowler has now built up a 0.3 of a second gap to the rest of the pack. The draft distance is about 5 to 6 miles an hour, and now some of the drivers are starting to push. Chris Stouffer now up to second position with that move. Barrett Rolfe also, we've seen a couple laps ago, tried to make a move on Stouffer, now wants to pass Beard as well. Not enough of a run for Rolfe, though, electing to save the fuel this time for the corner. Really backed it down. So that sense of urgency seems to be starting to pick up to try and gain a bit of positions before the pit stop window.
It does. I think now when they start to scramble in positions once again, as now Rolfe goes in the inside of Beard. And I think Beard, I hope that he has listened to my calls, try to get a few spots back, don't push the car way too much, and then you can actually stretch it off and be even in 31, 32 laps. But that, I think, opens up the dreams of having Galvin and Branch closing by and contend.
With some of these cars now starting to fight and try and get themselves back up to Fowler, it should be worth noting that Jason Galvin and Joe Branch are slowly creeping on into the conversation as well. They are slowly trying to gain the time back and are now within 1 second of this group. So all the shuffling has started to see them gain time back. Beard has already lost 1 second though to Rolf right now. So he is now the buffer essentially between the two packs. As well, Forsyth and Yazik are also about 1 second back of Galvin and Branch now with all of this. So it's now getting to where the buffer points are starting to build up.
Yeah, and that's a good opportunity if you want to keep Beard away at A, right, and not having him go closer and closer, as Galvin is 0.7 away from Beard. Then it's going to be interesting how Galvin is going to be aggressive, trying to close on Beard, and if he's going to work with Beard to save the fuel out of the number 05 car.
We're still for now in the race lead indeed, so it's now going to be interesting how things play out for Fowler's strategy for this race. Fowler, though, wants the lead as Brian Beard only made it 29 laps again.
Oh, boy.
And how concerning is that now where you've only hit 29 laps twice in the early goings?
I think you might have to rely on a yellow flag. That's all you need. Because if you go 29 laps every single stint, you're going to have to do a very last second pit stop, like a splash and dash to make it to the end. And it's not the thing you really want to do with the field so equal right now, even though they are separated within small gaps to one another.
Barrett Rolf now up to second as well, by the way, as Stouffer went to the inside line, trying to defend a little bit. Now approaching lap 60 this time. Beard has cycled in front of these drivers by about 25 car lengths. I'm curious to see what Fowler's fuel mileage is going to be here for this run, keep in mind, with all the laps he's led as well.
I think I'm going to estimate right about 30.
He has had a lot of swapping, though, and was single file for a good portion of that run. Jason Galvin only made it 29 laps this stint as well. So he's now coming to the pit lane on lap 60.
Yeah, unfortunate to see Galvin going to the pit lane, but going on lap 60, I think he went 31 on the stint of the previous one. Now he's going to go over here and pit on 29 laps as they are on lap 60. And looks like Yachik is also going to come to the pit lane this time by, and Forsyth maybe as well.
And it looks like every lead car for their respective groups is starting to have to come in, indicating this time Tony Schoen and Miguel Hagstrom have also indicated they'll have to come down for respective stops. Here comes Schoen in for his stop. Brian Yazik also has had to come in, this time by. Van der Sant, Musselman, Hagstrom. Among the drivers in, Rigney also ducking down. And with Chris Fowler now reaching 29 laps this time, we'll see if he can stretch to 30, Lorenzo.
Yeah, but I can't wait to see what Newsom does. She's on 26 laps. She's 3 laps less than the guys in 2 laps less than the guys in the lead path, even 3 if you counted the lap as well. So it's interesting if she's going to go for that big fuel range once again. She might get cycled back, but anyway, again, this is starting to become, instead of a gap battle, a fuel battle of sorts, as they are about to go into their second pit stop in a little bit.
Barrett Rolf, now your race leader with the draft by Chris Fowler, that time buying to turn 1. Stouffer stays within half a second of this group. Cycling just in front of this group as well was Brian Yazik. Chris Fowler's indicated he's having to come in this time. Malechka the third only made it 29 laps after stretching it to 33 last in. Malechka the third's indicated he'll have to come down. Joe Branch coming in this time by as well. As you see the drivers now peel their way down for additional pit service. Rolf and Stouffer continue to charge along, one with Ken Hacker, George Anzaldo, Newsom, Wagner, Lanini are also yet to pit for service this stint.
And I think what's going to work for Rolf a little bit is that he has Jacek right in front of him. He's not a slow driver by any sense whatsoever, right? He can actually hang back a little bit, save the most he can actually try to save. He's on 30 laps right now. I don't think that Rolf will be coming into the pit lane so far, but you can see he's going to stretch it out maybe 31, 32 laps, and that's what we want to see on the fuel range if you're looking to 170.
And lap traffic is fighting right in front of the leaders. Stouffer is losing time, but you can see in front of Rolf, Jacek, and Forsyth. They were just side by side for a split second. Rolf, I think, may have to come down just to avoid the battling here between these cars.
Yeah, he said he's coming in this lap. Stouffer in as well. I think Hacker is coming in as well. It's auto indicated too. So top four will be pitting right now. So Alexis Newsom will take the lead once again.
Rolf with the deep send into the pit lane this time, just makes it to 60 miles an hour at the commitment cone. And Chris Stouffer with them this time. Newsom does indeed stay out for a few more laps here, it looks like, as Hacker and Enzotto have also ducked down for service this time. Worth noting that Chris Fowler has cycled in front of Jason Galvin and Brian Beard by a significant margin on the racetrack. You see on the pylon by about a second or so. We'll see how things play out for that battle for the race lead as Rolf and Stouffer now coming out of the lane. I think they'll cycle right where they are at on the racetrack, if not very close. Rolf with a big advantage. That's Chris Fowler right there, coming right there. So Barrett Rolf has cycled to the lead in a big margin with Newsom in the pit lane.
Yeah, what a mission from Rolf, basically overcutting everybody else in the grid and getting P1, but he's all alone by himself. But he'll eventually get caught up by Fowler and Stouffer eventually.
We'll give an update on Newsom in a moment. We'll see how Newsom fares out. Where's the potential of bad news? We are hearing it looks like technical issues may have struck for the series points leader. Right in the midst of the pit stop window. Unfortunate for Alexis.
Wow. Worst case scenario right here.
And that's going to blow the championship wide open as a result, potentially. With Newsom already falling down the pylon. Meanwhile, your race lead group is scattered about a little bit. 5 cars separated by 1.6 seconds up at the front. Barrett Rolf with a half a second advantage over Fowler. Then it's Chris Stouffer, Brian Beard, Jason Galvin, your top 5. An impressive race so far, Renzo.
An impressive race so far. 67 laps out of 200 here on the track. And apologies, but it's been a very, very good run out so far. The Lorenzo curse is not happening so far. No yellow flags, but it's been an impressive outing what these guys are doing with DW12.
It's been an impressive race so far, and as we approach a third of the way through the action, we'll take a quick break. You're watching RaceSpot.tv for coverage of the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by the DMLC Racing Channel.
Wreck avoidances.
Stay low. He's high, stay low.
Daring passes.
Oh, you're gonna get it.
Silly jumps.
Oh my god, a drive-through.
The thrill of victory.
They're against the wall. Good win, Mark. Stay low.
And the occasional mishap.
My sim crashed.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
Welcome back to coverage of the Lionheart Speedway series presented by the DMLC Racing Channel and the Sim Racing Studio Indianapolis 500 presented by Chris Fowler Racing. Justin Prince, Lorenzo Bonder with you, Arjuna Kankipati in the producer's seat for today's action as the lead pack has condensed down to about 0.7 of a second for the top 5 cars. It's been an interesting race so far, with plenty of strategy calls and these drivers trying to stretch the fuel as long as they can in some of these stints, but it's Fowler who runs single file up at the very front of the field as the rest of the competitors settle back on in.
Everybody settled back on in, but instead of a 4-car ball-up that we had on the last stint between Fowler, Rolf, Stover, and Beer, we now have Jason Galvin joining the fray, so the number 42 being looking very hungry to try to claw himself back up to the lead once again, like he actually was on the first stint out of this race.
And by the way, Alexis Newsom, we talked about having technical issues earlier on in the race, has lost 3 laps, is back on the racetrack. So tough break again for Newsom, the points leader, 28th. Now on the racetrack, just one driver out of contention so far. Bert Hopkins to 3rd, 34 laps down. But now this is to where the race gets a bit more calmer for some of these competitors. It has been green so far. How do you try and keep yourself loose and try and keep yourself relaxed, especially knowing you're trying to pace yourself to get yourself to the final few laps of this race, to get yourself in contention towards the end?
I think it's a good point for hydration. I think the pit stop provided you a few seconds of relaxation. Just relax your back, relax your muscles. Try to, reset once again. If you have a crew chief or a spotter working with you, he can actually give you a few words of encouragement working with you. Some of these drivers actually have, and they work in tandem to make sure the strategy is on pace and on par with everybody else in the field. So every little addition that you can have extra, your motivation is what counts.
It's going to be very critical, that motivation, as the night goes on indeed for some of these competitors. By the way, we followed along with Alexander Vandersen as the night has followed along. Continues to slowly and methodically make his way to the pack. Vandersen currently approaching the 15th lap on his respective stint. Currently in the battle going on for 12th position. Matt Houston, Ken Hacker in front. You can see the line being taken by Vandersen, trying to find the right line. Keep it smooth, keep it calm, and keep it patient to be able to put yourself in a good situation. After all, it's very difficult to be able to make the move when they're side by side and swapping like they are in front with the dirty air. Vandersen now taking a bit of a peek now towards the inside line in this grouping. Wanting to get a slingshot around a couple cars, makes it side by side for 12th spot. Better run though for Hacker this time of the high line. And keep in mind, if you're in this grouping here, yes, it's further on back, but it's still going to be important to get yourself higher up into the positions because of the double points, Lorenzo. That is so critical for this race in this season, with it being the second Triple Crown event of the campaign.
Yeah, and I think for Vandersen, it opens up the whole championship, doesn't it? Because you know that your direct competitor is in P28, second to last 3 laps back. So I think for Vandersen, it's the moment of, be more aggressive, claw up yourself a few spots in the gridding, hope that a yellow flag comes up, then you can actually reset your strategy and go for more positions and get within top 10.
Interestingly enough, Vandersen actually joined Newsom as teammates on the open setup side of the iRacing platform, so an interesting thing to note amongst those respective competitors. Meanwhile, towards the front, Joe Branch, Craig Forsyth, among the competitors trying to close back up to the top 5. And so far, they've been able to do a pretty good job at that. They reduced the gap from more than 2 seconds to 1.8 seconds of the race leader. It is 1.2 seconds between them and Galvin.
Yeah, it's For now, the tricky for Forsythe and Branch to get closer is do not overtake in the wrong spots out of the track and work the draft appropriately. Just try to run some different lines so you are not within the arrow wash of the driver ahead of you, and then come with a little bit of luck to get closer. But the gap is still doable. 1.1 seconds separates for now Forsythe and Galvin.
Still chipping on away is the critical thing with the swap draft, and that's what they need to keep on doing, is chip away, chip away. That time by Joe Branch, chipped away within 1 second to Jason Galvin. Bit of smoke right in front of them. One car has just crashed towards the pit entry. Emerson Santos, just below the racing line, no caution, we stay green. So the 82, who is in 26th position, has smacked the wall.
Looks like a technical issue looking from my end what happened to Takashima, so it's unfortunate to see the Brazilian going out on the track. A driver that I compete against in other leagues is a really strong driver, but just not having a good luck here today.
Let's take a look as, wow. Went straight up the racetrack there on the corner exit, indeed. Very tough break for Santos. Now that machine has gone onto the tow truck. Oh, wow, the race lead is changing hands. Chris Fowler to the point.
Fowler to the point, and Barrett Rolfe will actually contend for that, but running a real wide line into turn number 2. Will get the running. There's a driver right ahead of him, which is Alexis Newsom. She will be 4 laps back, and that just gets worse and worse for the number 63 car out of the point standings leader. So a little bit of a nightmare scenario for Newsom so far.
That might actually help some of these race leaders save fuel, though. Newsom trying to snake her way to the bottom of the racetrack this time, while Fowler tries to drive his way back up to the point, that time by. Fowler gets the lead lap by 1/1000th of a second. And now with the swap draft picking back up at the front of the field, they are starting to pick up ground again on Joe Branch and Greg Forsythe's group. Brian Yazik has also joined their package, should be worth noting. You can see the backdrop. But they are starting to pick up some ground. Rolfe, high side, makes the move.
Rolfe, high side makes the move, and who said that the high side stuff doesn't work here on this track? It does work if you align yourself properly and make that overtake, as they now get closer and closer to Newsom. I think the gap, the separation is right about 7/10 of a second. So whoever's in the lead so far can save a little bit of fuel, despite being 7 to 8 seconds back to Newsom in the front of this pack.
Rolfe nearly scraped the wall that time, coming through the short chute, it looked like. As now Rolfe picking up the draft for Newsom in front, who continues to snake around. Swap draft sees Fowler get past once more. Forsythe and Branch are now within 0.8 of the cars in front. So now they are knocking on the doorstep of turning this pack back up to an 8-car group. Side by side for the lead again. Fowler this time leads, near contact with the left front wheel.
Woo. Talk about close calls. We saw that with Forsythe and Fowler, right?
And keep in mind, that's where the major pack started to break up, was that checkup from before. Rolfe. Another run, another dive, and now is within 10 car lengths of Newsom in front as well.
Yeah, and now Forsythe and Branch are right about 7/10 of a second. I would say boldly that if they keep going like this, maybe in the next lap or so, they can actually be within 5/10 a second. And if you're half a second, you can start dreaming about, joining that frail and contend for positions, even though they are late on their stints.
Back to the point once more, Fowler. And they're trying to follow the line of Newsom. Newsom is not wanting to lose another lap here. Keep in mind, Newsom falls behind the inner lap. It's going to really hurt the chances for the race, to say the very least. How things have been playing out to be able to even catch up to Trevor Malone. Now within 7 car lanes. As well, Tony Shaw and Matt Taylor and company starting to group up together a little bit. Shaw and Taylor currently separated. from the rest of their group by about 0.6 or so as they start swapping for 10th.
A little bit of scramble for 10th position right there as Matt Taylor leads the pack. You can see Hacker and Shawn trying to go for it, and there's a little bit of a gap mount up between him and Trevor Malone and Robert Malecka. Malecka all running by himself, 3 seconds back from Jacek. So we saw the scenario once again of these guys in P10 trying to scramble and get closer and closer, but just could not get closer to Malecka.
Brian Beard this time made it 30 laps on his respective stint. He's now come in just before lap 88 start. So Beard now coming in for the 3rd time this race, the first of many. Some of the drivers, though, can stretch it another 7 or so laps. Really snaking down the backstretch that time. As Rolf, Fowler, Stouffer, Galvin, Forsyth, Branch, Jacek, all within reach of one another now as a result of this snaking as they've caught up to Newsom. Will they try and lap Newsom? Yes.
And no swapping whatsoever from Forsyth and Branch on the last few laps.
They've calmed it down a little bit, but now Newsom has hooked up with the race lead pack. How does this change things, Lorenzo? It's going to be the interesting mark if Newsom can make a swap draft.
Well, she's not obligated with the blue flag, so she wants to go back, and she will actually attempt to go back for her lost lap. She would go for it, and that makes things interesting for Rolf, Fowler, and Stouffer. That might bring Forsyth and that 3-car train right behind them closer and closer.
Going to be very critical now for this battle for the race lead. This time, Fowler tries to build up a run around Newsom. Forced to lift this time into turn 1. Rolf holds on to the lead and now has a buffer car. Of note, Hagstrom and Rigney have both ducked down this time by. The gap has increased again between Galvin and Branch as well to more than 1.1 seconds. Newsom going for the swap this time.
You can see Fowler trying to follow her line and get closer and closer to Rolf. But the run that Rolf will have on the outside of turn number 4 will be so big once again, and that will bring the cars closer and closer.
Galvin has come down this time by 31 laps on his respective stint. 4 drivers also coming in that time. Tony Schauen, Vandersen. Luis Gonzalez Nunez with a quiet race has also indicated he plans to come down this time. Some of the race leaders planning to join them this time as Newsom and Rolf continue their swap. Chris Fowler's indicated he plans to come in. Still in second, now diving his way underneath the white line to come in for his service. Forsyth and Jacek also joining suit this time. And there's a good chance Forsyth and Jacek, if they can get a good stop, will catch up a decent amount here. Down the front straightaway, meanwhile, Enzaldo and Houston fighting hard. Enzaldo able to defend.
Yeah, you can see Enzaldo being able to defend that inside line from Matt Houston, and Matt Houston not being able to overtake whatsoever, and they're probably going to go, I was going to say they go reset on the battle, but they're due to come to the pit stop, especially Houston, so I'll not be surprised to see Houston, as he already indicated, he's coming into pit this lap.
We seen Brian Beard a moment ago. We'll see where he cycles compared to Fowler, who is already through turn 2. As a matter of fact, Beard cycling right behind where Galvin, Jacek, and Forsyth all are. For Beard, it was a 9.9 second pit stop. One of the longer times in the lane so far in that stint at 35.2 as well.
Yeah, so far, his lowest pit stop under green, I think, was from Houston with her first pit stop, 39 seconds total, 9.9 in the lane. So that's what brought her back to P18 when she was cycled out after going 34 laps on the gas. So, while it was unfortunate, sometimes it does happen. You don't get the exit that you really want on the pit lane. It does happen from time to time.
Both, meanwhile, you see, is continuing to roll with Stouffer in second. Newsom still with the race leader as well. Brian Bear currently scored as the last car on the lead lap before this window. Hacker, Jenkins, Lanini, Wagner have gone in. This time, Rolf is ducking down to the cone. Chris Stouffer able to extend in an additional lap. Remember, Rolf has led a lot of this stint, with it being single file for the first few laps or so of the respective window. Chris Fowler, meanwhile, for the second straight window, has cycled 1.2 seconds in front of everybody else with a 10-second stop.
Yeah, but last time by, we saw Rolf actually overstanding that stint. He basically managed to overcut everybody else in the grid right now. So it is up to Stouffer to put that work, get closer and closer to Newsom, see if he can work the draft a little bit, as he's going to work the draft as Rolf is already out of the pit lane, cycling himself back into the track. Will be right about 10 seconds, I think, 5 or 10 seconds away from Stouffer as he's in turn number 1.
Zotto's come in this time by. Rolf has indeed cycled in front of Fowler by an additional 2 seconds, just about. A big gap. One of the drivers who have joined the conversation now in the second packing or so, that is trying to close up to Fowler and Rolf, Brian Yazek with a 9.4 is flying. The 9.4 in the pit stop cycle, he's swapping with Galvin right now, as Chris Stouffer has ducked down this time. An incredible race from Brian Yazek, to say the very least, here in this one.
Yeah, the number 55 is doing an amazing job so far, keeping with everybody of the leadership. Who will swap now with Galvin going up a spot on turn number 3.
And the thing is, Lorenzo, he wanted his goal to finish all 200 laps, wherever they may be. His plan, break the race down into 50-lap quarters, trying to slowly climb the pylon, and put himself into the final 50. He feels if he can get to that mark, we'll have a shot. He's already in a decent spot to have that shot if they can close back up to Fowler and Rolf. And as well as Chris Stouffer, who is now also ducked down in front of Rolf by a couple tenths.
So now halfway through.
Go ahead.
No, he's nearly halfway through with this goal of, separating 4 quarters. He's on the end of his second quarter right now.
Side by side. Now for the race lead. Rolf takes the point at the stripe. Swap draft continues right now with a 1.4 second advantage over the rest of the pack. We'll see where the timing fares out. Last time, Rolf, a 40.764 to Fowler's 40.649 on the stopwatch. Some of the drivers went as fast as the 40.3s, in fact, in this entire string of cars.
And no 39s, and I think 39s over here would be very difficult to achieve because you would have to go into quali setting, and remembering this is not open setup, this is actually custom fixed setup, which for race pace might be a little bit more secure than qualifying. Those 39s, it's a hard reach, to say the least.
A very hard reach. Only 2 drivers have achieved that goal of the 39-second bracket so far in their high 39.9s. Rolf and Fowler. And Fowler has been caught by that big grouping of cars of Yazek, Galvin, Forsyth, Beard, and Branch. Stouffer has settled on in as well behind the other cars. Newsom has been picked up by the lead group as well. So the fuel-saving games now continue as we are now at the start of lap 100, halfway this time by.
Halfway this time by, and Newsom just slipped without a pit lane. So what can work now on Rolf's behalf over here is just stay behind, maybe a lap or 2 before making that overtake, and you wouldn't lose a lot of ground to Stouffer because Stouffer's just right behind you. So why be in aggressive so far when you have someone just pushing that draft train, and then you can stretch it out to 31 laps?
Exactly. And Stouffer's in the great spot too, where if they do elect to start swapping here, that he can save a lot of gas here.
But you can see that Rolf is not having any of it. He is just staying behind Newsom there. Basically, I'm not going to say equal. Newsom is on her third lap of the stint, whereas everybody else is on lap 6, lap 4, specifically for Rolf and Stouffer. So the more the merrier they can get, and they're not losing a whole lot of ground to the other guys in the back. The thing is, they have to look out for Galvin, which is looming closer and closer on the back wing of Stouffer right now.
They're now within 1 second of the race lead, in fact. With Fowler making the swap with Galvin that time. And we'll see if Galvin elects to go for the swap this time. Yes, indeed, gets the big run down the front straightaway. And these drivers are recording 40.2s at the moment and are within drafting distance of the top 3 cars on the track in the top 2 for position.
You already can see them nearly with the wing in the frame right now. So it's now a question for me of how Galvin, Fowler, Jacek, Forsyth, and everybody else negotiates this. What was a 4-car train at one point, now a 5-car train, and now it is a 7-car train of sorts, trying to negotiate in terms of fields and things like that. It's going to be an interesting one for this thing.
And here comes Galvin. Now he's caught up. Going for the move that time for second. Not able to get the run, though, on Christopher. He needed force to really back it down to avoid contact with the wall in the short chute. This train includes 9 cars, 8 of them on the lead lap, stretching back to Joe Branch now. Couple drivers trying to take some peeks now in the pack. Forsyth trying to make a move underneath Yazek, couldn't get it to go. Is still Galvin wants to build up a run, it looks like.
And Forsyth running up real high on the wall, nearly get close to it as Galvin goes for it once again.
And Galvin goes for the race lead, trying to clear by Newsom. The factory back machine on the high side. Newsom not backing down though as Galvin runs near the rumble strips. Galvin forced side by side with the lap car, able to fill the hole and take the point.
Yeah, found the gap to work with in the lead, but if he's trying to work Newsom, he doesn't want to be behind Newsom one bit whatsoever. So now he actually manages to overtake Newsom and goes away with the lead. Will lead another lap in this race, but it's going to be a tricky one to negotiate with Newsom because she doesn't want to give away that position, because if she does, it's a lap down.
Doesn't want to lose any more laps, but Galvin puts Alexis Newsom 4 laps down, that time in 1 and 2. And now it gets interesting for how Rolf and company fare out. Galvin trying to defend to the inside line all the way to the grass that time. Incredible stuff, and we still have 95 to go this time by. They're racing like it's 15 to go up front.
That's some real interesting strategies up here in the field as Newsom now goes to the inside of Galvin.
Taking advantage of the run now is Chris Fowler as well, you see. Trying to move by Stouffer. Stouffer, though, still able to keep the high line for turn 1. Enough to be able to hold on for the position. He's trying to settle down for the moment, but Chris Fowler doesn't want things to settle down too much. He wants second spot. Already passed by Stouffer, side by side with Rolf. Rolf with the better run this time, though, through turn 4 to defend.
And now Fowler kind of covered up Stouffer on the run right there. He had to back up a little bit, just couldn't get the run. Now Jacek goes from the inside.
Really had to back it down, though, that time to avoid contact with the side pod of Fowler. Shuffled right back into a side-by-side with Stouffer and nearly side-by-side with Forsyth. Forsyth taking the chance to build up the run as a result, as now you'd have to think things have to settle down here. We're approaching the middle portions of the stint already. And keep in mind, as well, some of these teams are in good spots for the team standings, Lorenzo, right now, with all 3 of the drivers from Adrenaline inside the top 10, while Factory Backed is running 9th and 27th.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to see that Newsom had that technical issue and had to be pulled away to P27, but so far it's racing right. You cannot blame them for one bit. Just keep racing as hard as you can, and adrenaline coming away on top, especially with double points. That would stretch the lead quite majorly whenever the calculations are done. Thank God I'm not doing those calculations.
Yeah, the strategy is definitely going to be very busy for some of these groups in the minds of some of these drivers, as foresight outside around Yazik that time. And it looks like at the very least, though, I will note that Chris Fowler has indeed built up a buffer car. Yes, he has passed by Newsom, and Jason Galvin has elected to stay single file. So at the very least, Fowler wants to be the leader of this group right now. He wants the lead laps.
Absolutely. He was the most that extra point. Cushion, you know, of you led the most laps. So this fight is being real interesting on track.
Everyone else, it looks like, though, is doing what may be the smart thing: save gas, knowing we're inside that window of a few more pit stops to go, Lorenzo. It's looking like Galvin and company just want to ride. And just as I say that, Barrett Rolfe says, I want to go to the inside. They are losing. Go ahead.
I was gonna say he's looking real interesting. Some of these guys are not being overly aggressive on the gas, trying to make the overtakes. I think the one who hasn't been overly aggressive has to be Brian Beard. He's trying to go for the run on the inside of Brian Yancey. Just couldn't find any openings whatsoever. But I think for Beard right now, it becomes a little bit problematic because Jacek is losing ground to these guys in the front.
And with how things are playing out, there is another pack that is quicker than a majority of your main group. Robert Malechka III, Tony Schowen, Matt Taylor, Alexander Vandersen are running 40.3s and 4s consistently right now in pack number 2. So depending on how things fare out with the race leaders, especially with some of the diciness and the back and forth with Newsom at the front, these cars may have a shot to join the fun as well if this continues.
It kind of do, but the gap kind of stretched out to 3.3 last lap between Branch and Malechka. So while still doable, I think they're still relying on a yellow flag of sorts, and with this unpredictability that the leaders are having so far right now, is the changing leads, trying to save fuel, and being a little bit more aggressive than usual. We could see that scenario being played out over here. It's just that you have to wish on a sparkle right here, right now.
Indeed. They are within 5 seconds of the race lead. Of note, the pack is starting to break up for the race leaders too. Even with all this fighting, you may notice that the numbers are dwindling for the cars in the pack. Brian Beard, Brian Yazik, Joe Branch have lost ground by a few tenths. Those drivers still within drafting distance still, but they have been falling backwards to these cars despite the back and forth going up the front of the field to maintain the speeds.
Yeah, but I think Beard just lost a little bit of patience. Found the run on Jacek on this lap right now, going on turn number 1. So the number 05 is trying to work himself back up into that big pack of cars, but now Jacek cycled back into his previous position. I think there will be some teamwork right here to try to get closer within that 5-6 car battle.
Break things down simply for those just tuning in. We are inside a window where from here on out, essentially a few pit stops to make it towards the end of the race. These drivers are currently in the midst. Some of them about 19, 17 laps into their stints. Some of them as high as 26 laps, coming to 27 this time by. It's all going to be very interesting for Brian Beard in the closing stages, how things break down, as now Barrett Rolfe again swaps up at the very front with Chris Fowler trying to follow suit that time by to join the swapping group. Jason Galvin nearly smacked the wall. He just about knocked down the wall coming through the short chute, really had to back it down as they start to snake again.
And nearly going double side by side on turn number 3.
That was Chris Fowler who lost a lot of momentum because he hit the wall coming out of turn 2 as well. How will that affect Chris Fowler? We'll have to wait and see.
And Justin, Brian Beer and Yachik rejoined the fray right now with this.
Exactly what they needed.
Yeah.
Well, you said wish upon a star, twinkle twinkle little star, and they got that shooting star.
Yeah, they do. And Joe Branch not far behind them as well. 4.4 seconds behind Yachik. Kind of joins that fray as well. So we have an 8-car pileup, or actually 8-car train of sorts here with, can I say 5 or 6 laps to go in some of these guys' stints?
Well, just as you said that, we had Chris Fowler nearly spinning around in turn 3 on the rumble strips. So please, be careful. Be careful in the curse today.
You guys are gonna with this, man. Oh,
yes.
Again, I'll take it.
Meanwhile, on the racetrack itself, Stouffer now right up to the gearbox of Fowler. That slip and slide ended up costing them 6/10 in this pack to Rolf and Galvin.
It's really hard to actually catch up with Fowler and Newsom and Rolf, as a Beard won't get to the pit lane once again.
Again, making it to lap 30, but still paying the cost of having 2 29-lap stints early on in this race. If the map is right, would have to pit with about 23 to go with the current windows for the final stop. Mikael Hagstrom also coming in.
Yeah, if I'm Beard, is it being a clairvoyant and counting with a yellow flag was allowed a portion of the race and then going to the pit lane to be equal to the leaders?
Might be the call here. Or at least the hopes that you don't expect it to go green flag racing for nearly 120 laps.
Yep. By the way, Forsyth's actually moved up one spot on Fowler, so Forsyth a little bit back from what is Chris Stouffer, about half a second behind Chris Stouffer, and Stouffer 0.7 behind Galvin. So right now it becomes a little bit more of a gap out and trying to swap for positions, even though they're not carrying them. They're still trying to carry about field as much as they can. They're trying to stretch it out to 30, 31, but with the way this is going, it's getting complicated.
And the reason Fowler's dropping back, keep in mind, we mentioned this where he tapped the wall coming out of turn 2. He has a crack in the side pod. On the top part of the side pod, there is air now coming in possibly from the right side. And that seems to really be hurting him aerodynamically, costing him a lot of time. He's running 40.6s now. Looks like he can still keep up with the draft, but right now just doesn't have as much top speed with the damage.
It doesn't look like he kind of matched. I was looking at Forsyth's on the draft on Stouffer right now. Kind of matched what he was doing, not overperforming anything of the nature. So I think that it might open up the door for Yachik to get closer and closer to that number 55 and trying to make the overtake if he so desires. But Fowler is still the car that it can run and match up to the front pack right now.
See if he ends up having some time lost in the pit lane as a result of that, or if he keeps on trying to chug along. Galvin has indicated he wants to come in this time by as well. Separation between the leaders about 1 second now to this group.
Yeah, and I was looking, I think Malechka might be coming in as well in this pit stop.
There goes Galvin. Making it 30 into 31 laps on his respective stint. Brings Chris Fowler with him. Robert Malechka the third, and Alexander Vandersen ducking down this time by as well. That leaves Barrett Rolf continuing on the racetrack, trying to pull away from the rest of the pack with Alexis Newsom. Third to last scheduled green flag stops at the moment.
Yeah, Yachik already indicated he's coming into the pit lane. Looks like it is it for now. Can't wait to see when Stouffer and Forsyth, specifically Forsyth, come into the pit lane for their service, but Forsyth staying in for one more lap.
So Chris Fowler with a very quick stop you see on the stopwatch. Chris Fowler electing not to get the damage repaired. With this green flag race, he is electing to ride with it. Christopher, meanwhile, rides with Craig Forsyth in their respective package. You see all this traffic building up right in front of them. The tough thing for Barrett Rolfe, too, is the traffic came out right in the side-by-side. Now 2 factory-back cars in front. Rolfe up on the high side. Vandersen right behind Rolfe now, as Rolfe cuts to the inside, a much to the third.
And the question, will he go for Newsom on turn number 1? Looks like he will go on the inside of Newsom in turn number 1. Go for 29 laps, and we are right on the verge of seeing him go for the pit lane in a little bit. As we are now seeing Forsyth go for the pit stop.
Joe Branch and Matt Taylor also came in this time by, as Newsom goes for the swap once more. Rolfe approaching his 30th lap on the stint. Newsom, keep in mind, 26 laps on her respective stint. Stouffer approaching 28. Ken Hacker, who has also yet to pit, is on his 31st lap of the stripe. And Zoldo Wagner yet to pit. Craig Forsyth had cycled right around Jason Galvin and Joe Branch on his pit exit as well.
And so far, no other driver has gone 30 or 33, 34 laps other than Newsom on her first pit stop. So that big stretch has been quite impressive for Newsom. As you can see, 3 wide on turn number 3.
That is for position. Malechka the third and Matt Taylor nearly making contact. Malechka the third able to make the bottom work there. Into the pit lane this time goes your race leader, Barrett Rolfe. Hungry for his first victory of the season, coming in at 75 to go. Chris Stouffer now takes the point.
And Stouffer is on 29 laps on his fuel, so he has that 5-car train right in front of him. If you can get closer, he can actually try to save that extra amount of fuel before he goes into the pit lane, but it looks a little bit weak. It is right around half a second that separates him to the first driver on that pack, which is Tony Schauer.
Right now at the moment, just about 15 cars on the lead lap. Barrett Rolfe is already off and away. Chris Stouffer extending an additional lap. Keeping an eye where Rolfe cycles around with Craig Forsyth, you see in the backdrop. Closing on in with Jason Galvin. Looking like Barrett Rolfe will cycle in front of them by about maybe 15 car lengths. Closing into 10. So still within range.
Yeah, still within range. The one thing I really wanted to take notice right now, Justin, is something that could be developed in this stint, maybe in the second to last stint, which is the Robert Malechka, Matt Taylor, Tony Schauer, and Vandersen train. They were getting closer and closer lap by lap on Joe Branch, Brian Atchik, and Beard. So we can actually see more than 8 cars in fighting for positions in the top 10 and lead if this keeps going like this.
You're absolutely right. They're within 2 seconds right now, the back end of Joe Branch. And it's worth noting Chris Stouffer has caught the draft of the leaders, or rather that pack in front, I should rather say. That includes some of those cars referred to.
Yeah, he's coming in for the pit lane right now, so I can't wait to see where he gets cycled out once he's out of the pit lane, because he will come right with Alexis Newsom in the pit lane. So we have to see where Ralph is positioned on track to see where he is right now.
Barrett Rolfe is already in turn 2. Rolfe has already also been passed by Jason Galvin, Craig Forsyth. Now, the other end of the bread for that sandwich of 3 cars in their pack. Oh wow, Yazik, Beard, Fowler, and Branch are also lined up 1.3 seconds behind. Chris Stouffer already trying to rev up his motor from the pit lane. Meanwhile, it had a 10-second stop. The other driver's making their way down the front straightaway. Chris Stouffer does have Newsom coming out with the pit lane as well.
He might get the jump on him.
It's going to be close. Jason Galvin's coming up at full speed. And Jason Galvin might actually get the jump here, possibly. If he can build up enough of a run here. To the inside. Jason Galvin to the race lead.
Wow, that was really close. But what a pit stop from Galvin right here. I think right between Forsyth and Rolf as they come out of the pit lane.
And this now gets to the chess match discussion once again, because we are approaching those magic numbers. The next window estimated to end around 41 to go. Christopher, as a result, may be able to put in less time on the fuel tank and in turn save time in the pit lane for the closing stages with how he's played this out.
Yeah, that could be a possibility, because it looks like he's gunning for lap 162, 163, depending on circumstances, where everybody else is looking right around lap 152 to 155, and they might have to go for a final pit stop. I think everybody, if they keep going like this, is later for a final pit stop, but now it becomes that fuel battle where how much do they feel for that final pit stop, and why they get cycled out in terms of overcutting or undercutting drivers in the track.
And there's some massive differences, as we've discussed a little bit throughout the night. Brian Beer is on his 13th lap of his stint right now. Just the second lap for Christopher, a massive split between some of these calls here.
And some drivers might be heavier, like Brian Beer. He might go for a full pit stop service when he comes into his final pit stop. We are still to see if that becomes a reality. But some drivers, half a stint, 3/4 of a fuel, 1/4 of a fuel, half a fuel. It's those interesting scenarios that is making this race very exciting with about 69 to go.
Right now, Galvin, your race leader once more, Ralph Stouffer, Forsyth, and Brian Yazik trying to keep up within that grouping as well, with Beard, Fowler, and Branch top 8. Alechka the third, and Taylor at the top 10. So at this point, what do you think's going through the mind of someone such as Brian Beard, knowing you're in the spot where you're going to have the heavier car, likely if this stays green?
If he has a fuel calculator, or if he has someone doing his calculations for him in terms of fuel, that guy's got to earn his money right now, because we're getting to crunch time where a wrong pit stop will be your undoing in this race, especially within the final laps. And you can see now the second grouping of cars getting closer and closer. So get your mats out and fuel calculators out on your race laps caps, people, because that will be very important.
Meanwhile, as this goes on, Chris Fowler getting shuffled around with Joe Branch now side by side, costing Branch a little bit of time here with this. And give credit to Fowler, he's not wanting to give up here, especially with how he's performed in this race today. But that damage is definitely affecting him a little bit down the straightaways, and it's shown when he's especially been side by side. He's only up to 228 miles an hour down the middle of the backstretch.
Yeah, and they're still within the reach of the leaders, right? They are about 4 tenths behind. I think we have contact between Stouffer and Forsyth.
Caution flag is out for the first time as Chris Stouffer is up in the barrier. Absolutely incredible as that happened in the short chute coming into turn 4. And it was close as Forsyth comes across the front wing of Stouffer.
It looks like a little bit of a miscalculation in terms of gapping the cars one another. Let's take a look on the replay from perspective out of Fowler right here, or Stouffer, correction. As he gets on the outside line, I think he gets pinched in by Forsyth on corner entry, and nothing that Stouffer could do right there. That is really unfortunate.
He was in a good strategy window before the incident, and now he's out of the race along with Craig Forsyth with significant damage there. Our first caution flag of the day comes at about lap 135. Here's an arrow look full speed. This was as they were starting to shuffle about amongst the lead pack still.
Yeah. Doesn't look like any car understeered into each other. I think that was, again, I'll bet on miscalculation in terms of gaps going for corner entry. That was really unfortunate for, in my opinion, racing incident fully. No blaming drivers whatsoever.
See it once again. Hard flip for Stouffer. And as a result, pit lane is busy.
Oh, it will be a busy one. Basically, all strategies are now reset. You know what this kind of does? This kind of puts the drivers with the mindset of, if they can go 32-33, we're going to be able to see some interesting calls towards the latter portion of the race, because everybody might have to go for a splash and dash, because going for 35 here, it will be complicated. But for now, everybody's just trying to cycle themselves back. Galvin being the first car out.
Able to get the race at the commitment cone over Brian Yazik. One driver still having a bit of struggles you've seen there, trying to make their way through the pit box. I believe that was AJ Musselman towards the back of the field. There are some lap cards as well going to be mixed in as well here, possibly. We'll have to see. The only lap cars, I should rather say, are Malone and Newsom. The drivers at the front who stayed out here are Hacker, Anzaldo, and Wagner, which is an interesting call.
Yeah, unless they're slated to go into the pits, to the pit this time by, and try to get that extra lap of fuel, it works out for them a little bit. It's a strategy that I've seen other drivers use, and it works out. So it's going to be interesting, because that extra lap can actually be very big whenever they actually restart this race. So it's interesting, this call from Wagner, Anzaldo, and Hacker, especially Anzaldo, because Anzaldo was actually one of those guys that was going 30 laps on a constant basis on the field, and even though he was losing ground to some of the leaders, he was actually within top 3 whenever the leaders were cycling in, because he was just going on those 30 laps.
It's all going to be very interesting as a result here. 64 laps to go at the stripe this time. As now, we get that 1 to go signal. Hacker, Anzaldo, Wagner all stay out. As here's what happened to Musselman, by the way. As you can see, overran his box, had a tough time getting into it. He actually hit the wall too. Wow.
Ooh. Not the best save for the Musselman, unfortunately. And that for team standings can play a little bit of a big factor, because Raceverse was the team that was contending with the factory back in terms of standings so far. So having Newsom on P27, and then her teammate and Maletska in the top 11, and having one of the drivers, which is Anderson, right behind them, fighting for that spot, they were be very close within points. So every point you can get, it would be big. So having Musselman doing that fumble is not the thing you really want to, especially this close in the end of the race.
So now, to simplify things, it becomes a fuel mileage race.
Absolutely.
Especially for those who came in. Big gamble by Ken Hacker, George Anzaldo, Matt Wagner here. You have to think they might be hoping for the caution.
I think so, because I think this point of the race becomes a little bit of an attrition race of sorts. And one thing is a certainty: nobody can make it to the end, regardless if you pit stopped or not.
It's going to be very intriguing how this all plays out. It's Ken Hacker in control of the field. First lead laps of the season. Green flag is out. Back and away with 63 to go. And keep in mind, the top 3 have a buffer with 2 lap cars mixed in. Trevor Malone, Alexis Newsom are in between them and Jason Galvin. Swapping already starting towards the front. And Chris Fowler with that damage, getting eaten alive on the inside line by both Beard and Branch that time.
You can see there's a little bit of a gap opening up between Beard and wrench in the ad check right now because the gap widened to 1.2 seconds between the number 55 and the number 28 car.
Big time gap indeed, starting to build up amongst those cars as we now follow Laura Brian Yazik in the sim racing studio on board. These drivers have stayed within range of those race leaders plus some of the lap down cars. What can you do to try and save fuel critically here to make sure you get those numbers, especially knowing you've got 3 cars plus 2 lap down competitors who are off cycle and will have to come down likely twice?
It's a tricky one. If right now I really don't want to be doing fuel calculations. The margin you really want to go is about 33, 34. If I've done my 34, 34 for you to actually make it to the end. So you have to go, Alexis, use some numbers and omega fuel saving towards the latter portion, especially with the traffic going like this. We're not going to go 34 anywhere whatsoever. So it's going to be an interesting one of who makes it out towards the final pit stop with last fuel to play.
A lot of shuffling we've seen right there. Barrett Wolf and Jason Galvin also side by side. A lot of zipping down the front straightaway as they go back single file. And Fowler continues to remain relentless, trying to jump up the line as well with the back end of the grouping.
And
you know what has broken away by 2 seconds, Lorenzo, sorry.
I was going to mention that. Those 2 seconds, it's huge of sorts. But knowing that all these guys are within 5 laps within their sin and everybody else are lap 16, 14, and 17, but fuel-wise they must be on lap 12 or something like that. It's huge, you know. That could open up a gap if they get another yellow flag where Hacker and Zato Wagner could become a real big factor in this race with about, let's just say, 40 to go to say the least. If they actually get a flag over there, of course.
All going to be very critical. Think the big picture there. Barrett Rolf is currently the leader on his strategy. Looking at Van der Sant now in the midst of the pack. Lost a little bit of ground as a result. The time of the yellow, he is back in 14th position. See things getting very busy right now in the mid-pack. Some of the drivers want to gain some of the ground back that they lost in the early going of this race, including Van der Sant.
Yeah, because again, Van der Sant has that opportunity to move up into the leaders of the point standings, right? This race is a double points with the Newsom out of the picture right now, being 2 laps back. It's the one thing, 3 laps back, the one thing you really want from Van der Sant, move up the chains every single time, and now you're 0.2 behind Maletska at this current running.
Beer trying to move himself up a little bit more as well. They're back within 2 seconds of the cars in front. Not the place where you want to be right now is be that lead car of this pack, you'd have to think.
Yeah, especially for Beer, especially when you just gained the pit stop on everybody else, right? That yellow flag reset everybody's strategies, and that worked wonders for Beer. You can be within the same lap as everybody else and not be overly concerned of doing your mathematics. So if I'm Beer, I would be aggressive, but with the mindful set that I cannot understretch the field like I did in the previous innings.
It's going to be very important, to say the very least, that he does not have another 29, 30 laps into this race. Back to the swap once more. Barrett Rolf, Brian Beard. How critical is it for them to think about this pack at the moment with these 5 cars that are continuing to build up a bit of a buffer?
It's an interesting one because looking from my perspective, they're going to lap on, if they continue going for 30 laps or something like that. First car lapping would be Matt Wagner. He might hit it with 46, 45 to go. Give it another running, 15 to go, so he would have basically half a stint to fuel up in the final pit stop. If they continue under green, it can become a real tricky scenario because they're not closing by a whole lot of margins on them. Even though they have Malone and on Newsom on that perspective as well, fighting for positions and getting their laps back from them. But it's not looking good for now.
All of them have lined up into a train outside of that swap at the front of the group. Beard and Rolf swapping for position. Approaching the final quarter of this race. 54 to go this time by. Again, a shout out to the current race leader, Ken Hacker, who entering today had 2 top 5s, 2 top 10s in the season. 3rd at Homestead, 4th at Milwaukee earlier this season. Since then, not the best of runs. 24th in Atlanta, 33rd Phoenix, 22nd at Worldwide Technology Raceway, 21st Michigan, and 11th at Kentucky. Again, these are his first lead laps of the campaign right here.
And for his team, I think these points you're getting for now are really important because the Dark Horse team is not having they're not far behind, which is Matt Wagner and Charles Teed, but Charles Teed is in P18 for now, and the real factor is Matt Wagner, which is kind of leveling the ground or so. But for now, the performance that Hacker's doing is really good so far.
Back to the swap once more. Again, this is for current 4th position. They have now closed the gap a little bit to 1.1 seconds between them and the back end of Matt Wagner. Our swap is Tony Schowen, meanwhile, through all of this, is one of the benefactors of that caution flag, you'd have to think, because remember, he was in that pack that was about 2 seconds back. Now, he's knocking on the door for being up the front.
He is, and I think everybody else that was on that middle pack with Tony Schowen, Vanderson, Malecka have to say a saving grace because of that yellow flag and getting closer and closer. And they are within a second of sorts to the leader of Barrett Rolf in this pack, and that would be even more of a saving grace because the gap that he has is closing to Matt Wagner, so it's becoming tricky. But I think Arjuna said it best over here on our booth chat. Who's saying it best?
Bit of contact for position. Matt Houston just got hit. Big save for him as he ended up drifting up into Joe Branch's left rear tire. No caution, we stay green. That breaks up the pack a little bit.
Oh, that got close to nearly Forsyth Fowler levels, but actually they had contact in this one. Now overtaking Malecka, but let's see on the replay. The car will fully understeer into Branch, and look at that right-hand front. Lightly grazing the minor correction done by Houston. Even though that it is a minor correction, it is a big correction going at 220 miles per hour.
And again, we'll see this. No damage picked up from Houston. From the tap to the tire to tire. They stay fairly grouped together as a result here as they've regrouped their respective packs. Speaking of regrouping, now within 5 car lengths, Brian Beard to the back end of Trevor Malone. 49 to go this time by. We are within the final quarter of this race.
Looking at laps here, 25 for Anzaldo, going 27 for Hacker, 28 for Wagner. I think respectively with the fuel saving under a yellow flag, they could have gone at least 2 to 3 laps. On my calculation, they could pit around 47, 46 to go.
Those drivers about 25 to 27 laps in their respective stints. But as you can tell, Beard, Rolf, and Schowen have been able to break out away a little bit from Jacek, Galvin, and Fowler for now. But it's the matter of how their fuel saving is going to be so very critical. Remember, it was Vanderson who saved fuel to perfection at Kentucky, stretching it for 2 45-lap stints. And now, Beard wants to try and catch up to the rest of the current leaders, making the move now on Malone. And has a bit of a pick between him and Rolf.
And Rolf basically shutting the line out at 20 Shalin on the entry of turn number 3. So the generally motorsports driver could do anything whatsoever, as now Rolf is side by side with the number 69 out of turn Malone. Gets in clear on turn number 1 and followed by Lee Shalin on the entry. Oh,
what a bit of trouble in front. Ken Hacker ended up smacking the wall, crushing his side pod. The race leader is now slow at the bottom of the racetrack, and Zoldo has taken the point as a result. A big mistake in the short shoot, Renzo.
Yeah, let's take a look at the replay, because it looks like, on my perspective, that the Hacker's car just decided to understeer. A major understeer for Hacker, smashing the wall on the outside of between 1 and 2. You can see Newsom car on the outside. There's Zaldo right in front of him. Yeah, the car just decided to understeer, and that's a big damage for the number 24 car of the Synergy Motorsports Black.
That arrow wash, as well as the fact he didn't lift, going to also be major factors, Lorenzo, and all of that. He's already made his way to the pit lane, 30 laps in his stint. That leaves Anzaldo and Wagner yet to come down for service of those who didn't pit under the last caution flag, or rather the first caution.
Yeah, now question becomes, when does Wagner start to come to the pit? We are 45 to go in this track, 32 laps overall for the number 3 car. It's becoming key now, talking about the field strategy, because they had to pit once more. And the talk is who goes for the two pit stop, because Rolf and everybody else in the pack, 20 laps, 35 to pit. Can they go 34, 33? It becomes a big question right now.
A massive question. It's looking like drivers like Yazid, Galvin, Fowler are among those who are in the major conserve window. Newsom, meanwhile, leads this packing of cars. And Zoldo now in his 30th lap on his stint. Wagner, 32. And of course, in Zoldo, a lot of work done when it comes to Lionheart competition. Is someone that is willing to roll the dice in this series, as seen several times this campaign.
Rolf on the inside of Wagner right now. I think Wagner is not going to fight this way too much, but Rolf backed out of it.
And I think it's because one driver needs to come in, and that would be Wagner. He's coming in this time. That leaves Enzoto on his own on his strategy, 43 to go.
Now Beer makes the overtake on Rolf, and now eyes on Enzoto. Does he come with 40 to go? Because right now, with the pitting from right now of Wagner, he has to go at least 14 laps on his stint.
Gonna have to be very vital. Newsom swaps this time with Enzaldo. Beard still within half a second of Enzaldo as well. And Enzaldo is now stretched to the 32 laps on his stint. This is all while Tony Schowen continues to pull forward.
Yeah, I think the saving grace for Enzaldo is that he has Alexis Newsom working with him, so teammates working right now and helping Enzaldo save as much fuel as he can possibly save. So he will actually come to his lap. So if he goes 30 on his second final pit stop, it's 12 laps for the number 6 car.
Newsom has also indicated this time will be the stop. Always Beard has caught up to them. So with 41 laps to go, Enzaldo relinquishes the race lead. Newsom bats it down. Both of them to the commitment cone.
And now it's my game, people.
Now it becomes the fuel mileage saving game. With 41 laps to go here at the Brickyard.
And what makes more interesting now, everything kind of broke up because Schowen has nearly a second lead on Brian Yachik. Yachik has a second and third lead on Galvin, and then becomes the the draft train from Galvin and all the way back. So it's interesting right now. So some of these mind games being played out with 40 laps to go.
The question is, which drivers will make it on the fuel on one stop, and which drivers will have to go two? We'll find out in the next few moments. You're watching RaceSpot.tv for coverage of the Sim Racing Studio Indianapolis 500, presented by Chris Fowler Racing.
Wreck avoidances.
Stay low. Speed high, stay low.
Daring passes.
Oh, you're gonna get it.
Silly jumps.
Oh my god, a drive-through.
The thrill of victory.
They're against the wall. Good win, Mark. Stay low.
And the occasional mishap.
My sim crashed.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
Welcome back to today's coverage of the Lionheart Speedway Series, presented by the DMLC Racing Channel and the Sim Racing Studio Indianapolis 500, presented by Chris Fowler Racing. Justin Prince alongside Lorenzo Bonder with Arjuna Kankipati in the director's seat for today's action, with cameras provided by Esteban Balu, and what has been an intriguing race. Just one caution flag over the course of this event so far, and with under 35 laps to go, the fuel mileage is the main talking point. Drivers trying to save gas, and for some, they may not be able to make their marks. Some of the drivers have indicated they plan to come this time by, including Brian Beard.
Yeah, so 30 laps for Brian Beard. You know, we've been talking about who's going to save the best over here, and before Brian Beard comes into pits, real quick, Barrett Rolfe was saying on track, but Barrett Rolfe nearly went off track with a massive wiggle out of number 2, but good save for the number 33. The first shot John by the number 05 for Brian Beard. A little bit of a repetition what we saw in the previous stints.
Well, able to make it the 31 laps, it's going to be really interesting how he plays out. He might be one of the drivers who is in a situation for a two-stopper towards the end. We'll have to wait and see. That moves Tony Schowen up to the race lead by 0.6 of a second over Barrett Rolfe. Then it's about another 1.3 seconds to Brian Yazik. It's another 3 seconds or so back to Chris Fowler at Jason Galvin and company. As into the lane goes Rolfe, he made it 32. Yazik 32 as well.
Shawn number 32, Galvin 32, Branch, Houston, Vanderstand, Maletska. So lots of drivers on the 32, including Paul Jenkins, Matt Taylor, Rigney, and High Song on those 32 laps, 33 as well, and Musselman on 31.
It's going to be very, very close, to say the very least. Let's take a look at the entry for Kresge, as he had to duck to the inside to avoid hitting the back end of Lanini's car.
Yeah, nearly taking the Trevor Malone line.
Those drivers off and away as Tony Shalwin is in. He did stretch it to 32 laps to go. Jason Galvin also able to do the same. So this moves Joe Branch to the lead, Malechka the third to second, and Alexander Vandersant to third. These drivers really been able to stretch their fuel. They really backed it down on the pace, though, as they start to mix in with some of the traffic.
Yeah, Sullivan getting right ahead of the number 14. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, and nearly 3 wide into turn number 3 to scramble things out.
Getting very dicey right now with the lead cars and the lap cars. Branch coming in this time by. He'll bring Matt Houston, Paul Jenkins, Matt Taylor, Mike Rigney with him. Meanwhile, looking at Malechka the third, we'll have to see how things play out. These drivers are in a really good spot, Lorenzo. These drivers look like they may be able to make it towards the end here.
Yeah, they will be able to make towards the end here, regardless of what happens. They can go 30 laps. It's okay for them, which might be take some fuel saving. If we get a yellow flag, oh, oh boy, the thing that's what I really don't want to do right now.
Malechka the third, coming on in, bringing Vandersant with them. Those drivers able to make the commitment cone with speed. So they're in the range where all they need is a normal stint. Coming up to 30 laps to go at the stripe. The others, such as Barrett Rolfe, Brian Beard, they may be in major fuel conserve mode. They've already passed by Matt Wagner, George Anzotto, who are on their different strategy.
Yeah, because looking, some of these drivers will have to save 3 laps of extra. Go for 33 car laps, then 32 laps. And while it's doable, you have to just put your paddle out every single lap. And Vandersand, again, with the fuel strategy, can he make it to that final stint within the lead and fight for Malechka for the win? We saw that in Kentucky. It worked out, but here's a little bit different.
Going to be massive. Absolutely massive. Those drivers have already cycled to 7-8. Malechka the third has cycled in front of Vandersand. Vandersand currently about 1 second back of Malechka the third. Of note, it looks like Vandersand has had to come in again. Vandersand has had to come in a second time. So something must have happened on his pit exit. Yes, he sped 67 miles per hour, and he's missed the box on top of things.
Oh, no.
Unbelievable for Vandersand, second in the points.
It's unbelievable what's happening here, and that, you know, that opens the door. You know, for who was, and someone actually said this, you know who could be the favorite here to win this because of strategy alone? Tony Shalwin. Tony Shalwin can be the leader of the championship if he gets a good running out of this.
Absolutely huge, these types of races, especially with double points, especially with the Triple Crown. And Shalwin trying to be in the driver's seat, utilizing Anzotto to save. He's got a 4-second gap at the moment to Robert Malechka III. Vandersand has also served his penalty 43.6 seconds. And at this point, the main focus has to be for Shalwin. You'd have to think that gap to the 91 and the fuel number.
Yeah, absolutely. 5 laps for Tony Shalwin right now. We're 27 to go. He has to hit 32 on the mileage. So it's going to be tricky because he has Anzotto right in front of him. He's from Team Back. factory back. Who's the driver that he needs to watch out? Malechka. And what team is he? Team factory back. So I don't think that Zato will play coy over here with the direct competitor this late in the race.
Chris Lanini has had to make his way to the pit lane. Severe damage to the 92 machine. Was hit from the back end of the battle for 20th position coming off of turn 2. So tough break for Lanini, who has suspension damage of note, has just made his way to the pit lane. But keep in mind, Malechka III has picked up some other cars in the group. Joe Branch, Matt Houston, they also have a good chance here with where they're at.
Yeah, Branch is at right about 5 laps. Houston as well is on 5 laps, but looking at Fieldgate, the best condition in front out is Malechka.
See a bit of battling now as Jason Galvin wants to try and cut in front in this group. Not able to get the move on the inside that time to Matt Houston. Under 25 laps to go, coming up to 24 this time. And what are your nerves like at this point of the race if you're a driver knowing how tight things are with strategy and as well how tight things are for yourself to be in a position to win the race?
If you're Malechka and I would say most specifically Tony Schauer, the one thing you really don't want, and the one thought you have in your mind, especially if you're a strategist, don't get a yellow flag. That's the one thing. Just keep your car on track, try to find the gaps, and do not get a yellow flag. If you get a yellow flag, that will bring Brian Beard, Matt Wagner, and George Anzano into the conversation, and you really don't want that this late in the race.
And the reason you mentioned Brian Beard, he's been leading laps with clean air. So that's critical compared to the single file running some of these drivers have been doing to save. Here's Beard with the swap with Newsom. Alexis Newsom, keep in mind, trying to fight to be 1 lap down with this group. Rather 2. Newsom to the inside this time. Beard lets Newsom on go. And this has to be concerning for Beard because, again, he's the driver who only made 31 laps this stint. He's been burning a lot of fuel at the start of these runs. That has to be concerning.
That has to be real concerning because if he goes at 29 laps then, or 30 laps, then he has to put right around 12 to go, right? And even though it is basically a quarter of a stint nearly for your car, or a third of your stint nearly for your car, you really don't want to be pitting late in the race and then maybe come with the yellow flag to save your life in the late portion. So for now, do your best. Try to save the best you can and pray.
It's going to be very critical. Here is that power grouping of cars we referred to. They are still 4 seconds behind Tony Schauer. If anything, the gap has been widening a little bit here and there. So this is going to be very critical. Schauer and Anzaldo last time by 40.6, I should note, though. Malechka and company 40.5, so they are turning up the wick.
And the problem is now the driver ahead of him leading this pack is Trevor Malone, and Trevor is 2 laps back. The problem for me is that he grinded the wall, so he lost a little bit of time to number 69 and then clunker everybody back up into not full checkings, but still we'll make sure that Schauer's gap widens up a little bit more.
Keep in mind, Schauer and Anzaldo are losing ground to Beard, Ralph, Wagner, Jacek. Those drivers are running in the 3s. So it's about 1 to 2 tenths quicker at the moment for the top 4 compared to 5th and 6th. 5th and 6th that time by ran about half a tenth quicker than 7th on back.
Yeah, but I'm liking this scramble of cars between Houston, Galvin, and Rigney. as well. Rigney just playing real patient. We'll talk about Rigney's race here, Justin. We haven't talked about him all day long. Coming from last, just calling himself back into the top 10. A driver that we know in the IR teams is really good. And his day has been not too short, but phenomenal so far.
How about 18 positions gained for Rigney? 14th in the points, coming in just one top 5 in this series so far this season with 3 top 10s. Best finish a third over at Phoenix as Galvin makes the move on Houston. And Rigney's trying to follow suit. Rigney is right in the same ballpark, keep in mind, as Joe Branch, and almost in the same ballpark as Mochka III, so he's also in a good spot fuel-wise.
And the only driver within the same ballpark in this train is Matt Houston, so the one thing that the race first driver doesn't really want to do this with about 18 to go is drop back spots and be within maybe the last car in the training. He needs to be within maybe third or second car in the training if he really wants to contend for the win.
And hearing there is a problem with Trevor Malone where his brakes. This is going to be intriguing. Malone is coming on in, able to come down with the brakes. Had to slow roll it, in fact, he sped. He reported on the radio that there may have been a brake issue, which would explain what happened in the first run in his pit box. He was speeding by more than 30 miles an hour at the commitment cone that time alone. So that may cost him a spot to Newsom.
That could be huge.
Points are points. Mochka, meanwhile, has lost ground even more so to Tony Shalwin. The gap has now grown to almost even more of a gap. More than 4 seconds, almost approaching 5. You have to wonder how things play out for Shalwin, though, once Nzotto comes down. Or rather, I should say it's gone down to under 4 to 3.7 now.
Yeah, it's gonna be complicated for Shalwin to maximize the fuel efficiency when Nzotto comes into the pit lane. I'm gonna check how many laps. 25 laps for Nzotto, so he's due to come to the pit lane in the next 3 to 4 laps. So how does Shalwin save right about 3-4 laps, being all alone in the grid? I don't know. It will take an inhuman effort to do it.
It's going to be impressive if the job can be done coming up towards the closing stages here. We're down to 15 laps to go from Indianapolis. Wagner has indicated he's only been able to make it 29 laps, planning to come in this time. And the traffic is getting thick in front of these cars. Look at this, 2-3 wide. Beard really checked up. Barrett Rolfe takes advantage as several drivers scattered in.
And the number 5 for Charles T just had a really bad run in turn number 3. Checked up Brian Beard, and everybody else just, that's not my problem. Just gonna go to the outside in here and have a look in terms of gaining positions. Barrett Rolfe, especially him, going back to the lead.
And it looked like Wagner was unable to pit that time with Charles T down to the bottom side, letting the cars go. So we'll see when they elect to duck down now. Shalwin, meanwhile, making the move on Nzotto on the high side.
And I think Shalwin just got a saving grace.
Yeah, Trevor Malone's draft. Because he knows Nzotto has to pit.
Oh, yeah.
So Tony Shalwin now saving right behind Trevor Malone, which is going to be critical.
And I think I know what Maletzka told Nzotto to do. Nzotto, fight for the position. I don't want Tony Shalwin right behind Trevor Malone. Make him waste that fuel.
Meanwhile, the lead group able to draft off the back end of Newsom and Vandersen. Rolfe can now save up front. Rolfe, of course, having to stretch it very far on the stint, but it's still not over for him or Beard. Yazek has lost ground to the leaders.
Yeah, Isaac lost ground. The leaders 0.9 of a second separate. I think I just saw Vanderson's car smashing the outside of turn number 3. That will open up the gap to Rolf to go 3. But the thing is, he cannot make the overtake on turn number 3. You eventually lose time because the Newsom and Vanderson are kind of slow, and Newsom, especially her, has to come to the pit lane.
Newsom ducks down this time. The final stop. Barrett Rolf continues to ride, and Zotto has ducked down. Brian Beard stays behind, 2/10 behind. And they are really backing it down. Sometimes draining as low as 218 miles an hour into the apex of the corners. Coming up to 10 to go this time by. Can Rolf or Beard save it? Or can someone like Jacek or Schauwen get into the conversation for the win?
Last time by for Barrett Rolf, 40.6. There could be some fuel saving because he doesn't really want to get closer to Luis Gonzalez, Nunez, and Vanderson. He's just staying right behind him, trying to maximize the fuel efficiency. But the problem is, Brian Beard is not far behind, and if Brian wants to contend for this, it's a long shot. We'd have to save every single lap specifically to get closer and closer within that 34 fuel range, but he can do it.
Newsom has had to come down a second time for service. All while that air pack continues to fight major defensive moves. Galvin and Malechka III side by side for 5th position.
Good coverage out of Malechka on turn 1. Let's see what happens out of 2.
Starting to use the defense of Miguel Hagstrom. Hagstrom ends up nearly getting clipped that time. Galvin has to go to the high side. That checks up a couple of our drivers behind as Joe Branch and Rickney both go up high. Of note, Jacek is backing it down aggressively. How about 41 seconds last time? Caution is out down the front straightaway. And
Rigney.
One car flipping, it's Rigney. Contact with Hagstrom down the front stretch, and this changes everything.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I'm at loss for words, man.
And this becomes a shootout towards the end. As a result of this contact, Rigney, a hard flip, ends up also getting clipped by at least one other car. So take the fuel out of the equation as we take a look at how this happened.
Straightforward shootout. Everybody's going to go to pit. And I think Barrett Rolf and Brian Beard just got the saving grace.
And there's an error wreck in live action turn 3. We still follow along with the replay, though. As you see Hagstrom making side pod to side pod. Again, incident just occurred in turn 3 with this. Hagstrom again. Vanderson collected as well as Kresge. And now it becomes a major shootout.
Yeah, it does. So it's going to be the busiest pit service in the history of the Indianapolis 500. To say the least, we're going to basically have a green, white checker, it looks like.
We still have plenty of laps. I don't think they would come down, you'd have to think, though. We'll have to see if some feel they might. Rolf stays out. Beard stays out. Jacek stays out. Majority stay out. Jason Galvin does pit. So most of the
Yeah,
field electing to keep the track position.
I think some of them are actually going to the pit stop because they either cannot make it or they're trying a different strategy. You know, counting with another yellow flag maybe, because we're probably going to go back with 4 to go, it looks like.
Give or take. So now how do you try and play this out? Because this now moves it into a conversation between Ralph, Beard, Yazik, and a lot of others here, depending on how big the runs come into play.
Whoever gets the best run, I think, wins.
Keep in mind, Trevor Malone's in between them, too. For 3rd and 4th.
Yeah, if I'm Malone, get out of, like, go to the inside on the restart, let Shawan and Maletska go through, as we're seeing now. The issue, once again, what happened between Hagstrom and Rigney, and it's an odd one for me to put it mildly, because I don't know who understeered into who or who went into who.
Here's the tail of the tape from Houston.
Looks like Hagstrom went into the wing of Rigney over there.
And then the second incident, I'm not sure what happened here.
I think Hagstrom had a broken car, but I don't know. I don't understand why he wasn't on the service area already and lost control of the car. You can see now losing control of the car first time, and then there's a little bit of a bump that separates the entry of the service area to the track where the grass is located, and he actually hit that bump and veered back into the track with full force.
Here's the view from Wagner, who just avoided it.
Whew.
Keep in mind, Wagner came down for service a little while ago. He's got fresher tires than the cars in front. Want to go signal.
Malone is out of the picture.
And because we're inside 10 to go, Malone will now have to let by the cars. So that makes sense there. So that moves Shawan, Malechka, and company closer as a result to the rest of the field.
Yeah, that will kind of blow the gates right open to allow Shawan and Malechka to be aggressive because they have better tires. They have more fuel. I think they don't have to care about fuel, Rolf, Beer, and Jacek, to be very honest, because they have 4 to go, and I think they have enough to make it to the end, but still a question mark has to be put right there. But it's going to be an interesting restart with 4 to go. I can see full aggression out of the drivers here. I wouldn't cut out another yellow flag.
And the next yellow flag could end the race too, Renzo, with how many laps there are to go.
Yeah,
so drivers need to be aware of that.
Yeah, and we know that ended already a race in this Indianapolis running. So they cannot be overly aggressive, which was season 2.
It's going to be a wild finish. The question is, who can come away with the victory? Closing stages for the Sim Racing Studio Indianapolis 500, presented by Chris Fowler Racing. It all comes down to 4 laps. Rolf, Beard, Yazik, Shawan, Malechka the third, the top 5. Green flag is out, and we're underway for the final few laps.
And what a jump from Rolf.
Is it too big of a jump is the question. Yazik wanting to go for second. He rips the position away from Beard on the inside as the snake starts for Rolf. Tony Shawan trying to be aggressive on the high side now for 3rd position. Yazik trying to block all the lanes.
And Malechka didn't get a good restart. Joe Bracey now moving into P5 so far.
And the caution flag is out. That may end it. An air car rides the top of the safer barrier. It's Matt Houston. And let's take a look at what happened here.
A similar incident to what happened to Stouffer and Forsyth here. Very similar, nearly equal.
I believe that was Jeff Gion who was the error car in the incident. It was 3 wide back there.
And that settles it, by the way, Justin. It looks like we're going to finish under yellow.
Some tough contact. And now that brings us to 2 to go. This time by. Absolutely incredible closing stages. If it ends up indeed becoming a ending under yellow situation, to be the first win of the season for Barrett Rolfe. And what a job it would be if it's the case, is the key word. If. Because Barrett Rolfe came close several times. He's had the speed in a majority of the races, 7 top 10s and 8 starts in the campaign. And now he leads the field coming to 2 to go in the Triple Crown event at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
That light goes out. Oh boy, we're going to be good. We're going to be ready for a good one.
And the lights stay on top of the pace car. What an impressive day for Barrett Rolfe in terms of raw speed to be able to get himself towards the front in the first place, Lorenzo. But he stayed inside that top 5 from about lap 30 onward.
And never get out of it. And never get out of it. I think that's what matters the most for Rolfe. Always trying to trade places with the leaders, and sometimes trading places with the leaders matters. You know, if especially these late portions where you are fighting for top 3 and things like that, and you are the first car in the running. If you are the first car in the running here, Justin, that gives you a big advantage. You can jump at any time when the pace car is into the pit lane. That's what Barrett Rolfe did. Nobody kicked 10. And the late caution will basically give him the win in this race.
Give credit as well to drivers like Brian Yazik and Brian Beard in this one. They both did some good jobs today. Yazik played this race methodically, got himself in the conversation late, was charging hard before the caution flag. And Brian Beard had the pace right from the get-go, right from qualifying. It was going to be tight on fuel for him, I think, Lorenzo, still, even with the caution flag. But still an impressive job for him.
Yeah, I think I heard on radio that Brian was not confident he was going to make it on field despite the restart. So he had to held Yazik a little bit on the restart, even though Yazik was able to make the move. And the gap widened between the drivers as we are about 1 to go. But what a running from Brian Beard. We counted him out at some portion of the race. Getting a top 3, coming from first is the best result he can actually, one of the best results he can get. Of course, not the win, but what an outing.
We get the 1 to go. White flag. Final lap from Indianapolis. Give credit as well to some of the drivers who really took advantage of the caution flags late. How about Paul Jenkins, up 16 spots? That's a 7th place run for Jenkins. Matt Taylor able to finish in 8th. Wagner recovered to 9th spot after having to make an extra pit stop in the closing stages. But it was a tough call for Galvin, Fowler, and company. Those drivers 12th on back who pit under this caution. Previous caution, rather.
Yeah, you know what's impressive as well? 3rd to last, 2nd to last in the top 10. It would have been all 3 cars that were 3rd to last, 2nd to last, and last would have been in the top 10 if Rigney didn't have that issue with Hagstrom, looks like. But what a performance out of these 3 cars in the back. That shows that the 500, doesn't matter where you start, you always have a chance to make it in and make it in if you play your cars right.
Agree with you indeed. And one thing to note, it's going to be interesting how the points fare out, is especially with some of the top drivers having struggles today. Tony Shalin might be in a good spot to potentially take the points lead. We'll have to wait and see. But out of the final corner, it's something that he's come close to several times this season. It's something he's wanted to have happen. And now, he's been able to do it. The checkered flag waves up at the stand for Barrett Rolfe. He's your winner of the Sim Racing Studio Indianapolis 500 presented by Chris Fowler Racing. It is Rolfe's first win of the season after having pace all campaign. Yazek, Beard, Chow, and Branch round out the top 5 in what was an incredible race for Renzo.
Yeah, for finally struck the luck stroke for Barrett Rolfe. Always with really good pace, but something always happened to Barrett Rolfe in the middle of the race, regardless of what happened or some strategy gone wrong. And I think the biggest one you could actually possibly win here, you got it, and the strategy and the pace just was there for him to make it out on top of everybody else. What a finish from the number 33.
And a lot of congratulations for the Ascari Auto Sport machine as well, coming down the back straightaway. An incredible victory today for Rolfe. When he under caution, yes, but he definitely had the pace for this one. In the end, Rolfe leads 53 laps today. That is a race high for him. And a chance to go to HyperX Victory Lane. You have to wonder what the emotions are going to be like for him here at the Brickyard. Rolfe will get the chance to celebrate now down the front straightaway with a big victory in this one. Rolfe now burns it down on the front straightaway with his first victory of the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by the DMLC Racing Channel. Came into today finishing second once in Atlanta, third at Worldwide Technology Raceway. And now, a Triple Crown victory for his first time to HyperX Victory Lane in this series. An incredible race today, and an incredible long run to start this off, but in the end, cautions breed cautions as we take a look at your Car Knox race results. Barrett Rolfe wins under caution over Brian Yazek, with Brian Beard in third. Tony Shaw and Joe Branch round out the top 5, with Robert Malechka the third, Paul Jenkins, Matt Taylor, Matt Wagner, Jeff Young rounding out the top 10 positions. Behind him on the board as well was George Anzaldo, who led laps today, with Jason Galvin electing to pit in the closing stages. He finishes in 12th. Chris Fowler finishes in 13th. He led many laps as well in this one, with Gonzalez Nunez quietly from 22nd to 14th. AJ Musselman finishes in 15th. The first driver 1 lap down, Charles T. The rest of the drivers 4 laps down or more. Matt Houston involved in the final caution. Alexis Newsom, Trevor Malone also 4 laps down. Alexander Vandersen 8 laps down, with Christopher Kresge along with Miguel Hagstrom also 8 laps down. Those drivers 20th to 22nd, respectively. 23rd, Mike Rigney 9 laps down. Chris Lanini got involved with contact with Nunez at one point, finishes 28 laps down, 24th. After hitting the wall, Ken Hacker parked his car after destroying the right side pod from the race lead in 25th. He finishes. Chris Stouffer involved in the first caution flag of the day with Craig Forsyth with 67 to go, 26-27. They finish. Emerson Santos, and an unfortunate day for Vern Hawkins III, who crashed before the race began. He finishes 162 laps down. An incredible race today, as that brings us to our HyperX post-race show, because the Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com. And don't forget to use the promo code LionHRT15 for 15% off orders. Let's dive straight into HyperX Victory Lane, where Barrett Rolfe has finally done it. He is a winner in the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by the DMLC Racing Channel, and brings his Ascari Auto Sport machine into HyperX Victory Lane in a Triple Crown event to boot. Barrett, how does it feel to finally win in this series?
Oh man, hands are still kind of shaking a little bit. It's not quite the way I wanted to do it under yellow like that, but it didn't stop me from hollering anyway. I'm super stoked to be able to pick up the win for Ascari Autosport, Apex ATX, Apex Hunter United, those guys behind me. It's incredible. I mean, I'm kind of at a loss for words almost. I mean, I felt like I controlled the whole race, but I was afraid I was going to lose it there at the end. And to get it done, especially in the Indy 500 in this series, just feels incredible.
What were the nerves like when, at one point, it looked like it might have come down to fuel mileage? It looked like it was going to be close for a majority of the field.
Yeah, and to be honest, I wasn't positive that I was even going to be able to make it at the end before that last yellow. I was looking good, and then on one of the restarts there, the lead pack with a few lappers in it kind of broke away, and I kind of knew I needed to be back up there, so I had to burn a little bit extra fuel to make up that gap. And then I think I was actually going to be a lap short, if not just barely make it, so that yellow kind of helped, but also, you know, kind of put me in a pretty precarious position there on the restart. So to have the luck kind of fall our way for once and the yellow to come out while I was in the lead there to get the win, it feels incredible. I couldn't be happier. I'm super stoked.
Now, this is a question that goes towards the direction for all winners here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. What type of milk will you be drinking to celebrate this victory here in HyperX Victory Lane?
I do like whole milk, so I think I'll have to go take a big swig of that right after this.
Let you get that swig of milk. Congratulations on the victory today, Barrett.
Thank you very much.
Barrett Rolfe, your winner today of the Sim Racing Studio Indianapolis 500 presented by Chris Fowler Racing. And he had to hold off before the caution flag a hard-charging Brian Yazik, who is making a one-off for this race today. And the LPM thumbs-up machine comes up just one spot shy of the victory. Brian, first of all, talk us through your race as you look to be really trying to save the fuel before the later cautions.
Yeah, Justin, it was tricky. You know, once that one caution landed with like 65 to go, it made it real obvious how this was all going to finish up. So it was just a matter of getting to your window. The first run, I was gonna get there, and then once one of the guys that wasn't going to get there peeled off, I had to run, and it messed me up, and we were going to be real close. Then we pitted right on the border edge of it. You know, that last caution saved us, but it was going to be, we were either going to make it, you know, until turn 2 or the start finish line. I wasn't sure where it was going to end up, but you know, we had nothing on the line for other than just the win, so we were going to take that gamble and roll with it. Luckily, we got that caution, and unluckily, we got that final caution.
Yes, indeed. And for you were definitely charging forward on that run as well, Brian. What was that like in the closing stages as you found your way past Brian Beard and were closing up to Barrett Rolfe for the caution?
I mean, my vision, how I saw that going on the backstretch before the restart was because I could see the leader on the restarts, and I know Beard couldn't. So my thought process was going to be to time the restart to where the leader goes, and I would be to the inside of Beard and dispose of him by turn 1, setting me up for down to pass the leader into turn 3, and then I was just going to try to block and do what I could do from there to maintain the lead. But we didn't quite get the restart we needed, which put Beard in front of us going through 1 and 2, and then we finally disposed of him, and then it just, we sent it down into 3 and it stuck and it got a whole lot of speed. We were coming out of 4 with a whole lot of momentum, and I heard Chris Lanini on the Discord yelling, wrecking, and I'm going, no, and then the caution came out when, we were up to the side pod there, but had that run out, I think we had it. It stings to finish second on that one.
Talk about all the work to prepare for this race, because it's talked about a bit of a one-off of performance here today for this race. What was it like being able to come into this race knowing that it's a track that you have grown up and loved, and having a chance to perform here if you did the job at the task at hand?
I mean, it's you know, it feels special, you know, to even have a sniff of it, you know. I was trying to break it down into quarters because, you know, you come into a one-off and you got to figure out, okay, who can I race around? How can I race them? You know, where is this, you know, person going to do something silly, or are they going to be waiting in line? So you spend the first little bit learning, you know, kind of how everybody's going to race. I said it on the Discord to the team. You know, we got about halfway. I said, hey, I got a sniff at it. You know, that's goal number one. And then just as the race ran down, you know, we were sitting third and then second, and it just kind of floated around. But we were able to, you know, it's not bad for an old man coming in here and running off one race compared to these guys that do it all the time. I mean, congrats to everybody that had a good one. Barrett, man, I almost had him.
Once again, congratulations, Brian, on the performance. That's Brian Yazik coming away in second position. I'd like to thank him and Barrett Wolf. Take the time to speak with us during post-race coverage. And Lorenzo, things get interesting now as the next race takes place in the month of August at New Hampshire. That's going to be an intriguing race, a 1 mile short track. The Magic Mile is going to be very busy for these cars.
It will be a very tricky race how to negotiate the lines out of New Hampshire. I know it's not an easy track for you to go to the inside line and kind of obsess the car a little bit, but I cannot wait to see on August 5th how these cars will go around the track. Then we go to Chicagoland. Two difficult tracks in my opinion, the next two tracks, but I'm not driving, they're driving, but they're at top of the line, and it's going to be an interesting race to negotiate.
It's going to be all intriguing to see the next few weeks how things shape out. I'd like to take the time to thank the presenting sponsors of the Lionheart Speedway Series and the Lionheart Racing Series, first with the DMLC Racing Channel. Looking for entertaining sim racing content? Look no further than the DMLC Racing Channel. All former Lionheart Retro Series Driver of the Year Mark Cohn's racing escapades as he battles for wins and avoids wrecks with cat-like reflexes, all while providing commentary sure to make you laugh, cry, or both. Follow along by subscribing to the DMLC Racing Channel on YouTube and like his Facebook page at the DMLC Racing Channel. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the luxury ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com, and don't forget to use the promo code LionHRT15 for 15% off orders. The SimXperience AccuForce Pro V2 is the premier professional simulation racing steering system. The key to its incredible realism is the groundbreaking direct drive motor control system, providing a driving experience that's second only to the real thing. For more information on the entire SimXperience ecosystem, visit simexperience.com. For sim racers, the buttkicker Gamer 2 or Simulation Kit adds the missing driver-to-car connection, bringing more realism to your sessions. By accurately responding to in-game audio, you can feel the track like never before, providing increased vehicle handling and faster lap times. Are you ready for the most immersive experience in sim racing? For more information, visit thebuttkicker.com, and don't forget to use the promo code LION2021 for 20% off orders. Minus 273 is the premier name in karting gloves. Their industry-leading gloves are super lightweight, durable, made of breathable polyspandex. Whether you're a kart or sim racer, Minus 273 gives you the control to reach victory lane. For more information on Minus 273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit minus273.biz. Don't forget to also use Minus 273 LHRS15 for 15% off orders. And it's not just those names, but many more and all the partners of the Lionheart Racing Series that help bring this series to fruition. To learn more about them, visit lionheartracingseries.com. You can also find out more information on the 3 competitions that the Lionheart sanctioning body runs. Lots more Lionheart Racing action is to come. To follow along with the action, be sure to keep up with Lionheart on social media at Lionheart Series on social media, while ESTV has all your esports needs and RaceSpot has your V Motorsports action covered. Be sure to follow along on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and more. Be sure to hit the YouTube subscribe button as well and notification bell as well so you don't miss a moment for sim racing action we get to cover. The next time Lionheart Racing Series action goes into action will be the Lionheart Retro Series presented by SimXperience for the Global Electronic Technology 175, presented by Minus 273 at Twin Ring Motegi. That takes place on July 22nd. Be sure to tune in 10:35 p.m. Eastern Time. It's when that coverage begins on RaceSpot.tv and ESTV. But with that, it's time to say goodbye. Congratulations to Barrett Rolfe on his victory today at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, adding his name to the record books. Your first-time winner here in the Sim Racing Studio, Indianapolis 500, presented by Chris Fowler Racing. Good night.